Okay. For Metro Historic Zoning Commission, we thank you all for being here and your time. We do have a little script that we read for public hearing. Pursuant to the provision of section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that a final hearing before this commission is appealable to the Chancery Court of Davidson County or the Circuit Court of Davidson County. This is statutory writ of certiorari. You are advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari to the specific decision of the Historic Zoning Commission. Also want to make some clarifications between a preservation permit and a regular permit. If you are approved for a preservation permit today and you are not the contractor, please know that it is your responsibility to make sure that the contractor has a copy of that preservation permit before beginning work. The preservation permit includes items that require final approval and inspection requirements. The final drawings are a part of the preservation permit. Following the preservation permit will save you time and money, as enforcement of violations can sometimes be a lengthy and expensive process. The preservation permit is not a building permit. No work can begin without the appropriate review and approval by the Metropolitan Department of Codes Administration. And also, just a little bit of housekeeping, is that if you are the applicant or in public hearing as well, and you're coming up to speak on the podium, please identify yourself and your connection to the project. Like if you're an architect or a contractor, a designer, etc. And also be sure that when you do speak into the mic, that this little red light is on, and so that we can hear you. Okay? All right, I think we've, first on our agenda is adoption of July 17, 2024 minutes. I'm asking our commissioners if they have any questions or motion to move to approve.
Madam Chairman, I move for approval.
Okay, Vice Chair Stewart.
Second.
Second by Commissioner David Price. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I see none opposed. And there's 4 concurring votes, so that passes. Ms. Mickelson, just to be sure, we are 4 concurring votes. All right, and if we had any changes to the adoption of the agenda.
We do have quite a few. Number 8, 2200 18th Avenue South is a request to remove from consent, so that'll be heard at the end of the agenda. 3609 Westbrook, that was revised for administrative permit. 2410 9th Avenue South is a request to defer. 1516 McKinney Avenue is a request to withdraw. 1812 Sweet Brier, the notification requirements were not met, and they were not met for 1331 4th Avenue North. So that 1507 Elmwood Avenue is a request to defer, as is 3802 Crouch Drive. So moved off of consent to the end is number 8, and moved off the agenda altogether is 12, 16, 23, 25, 26, 27, and 28.
Thank you, Robin. With those changes to our agenda, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Mayhall, second by Vice Chair Stewart. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I see none opposed. 4 concurring votes, and that passes. Okay, any of our illustrious council members here today? Okay, and we always thank them for their service to our city as well.
All right, next up is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the public or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. If there is a case on the consent agenda that you are in opposition to, please raise your hand when the time is called. Cases pulled from the consent agenda will be heard at the end of the agenda. Again, please raise your hand if you were in opposition to any of the following cases.
And Joseph, just clarification, I think one of our staff member will point out if somebody has raised their hand.
Okay. The first case on the consent agenda is 2005 Russell Street. That's for new construction of an addition. The next case is 1300 Greenwood Avenue, new construction of an addition with a setback determination. (2713) Woodlawn Drive, that's for new construction of an addition. 2200 18th Avenue South has been removed. 1311 7th Avenue North, new construction of an addition and outbuilding. Oh, that one's, yep. 1311 7th Avenue North. Is there a hand for that one? Yes. Oh, okay. 510 to 512 Monroe Street. 209 Broadway, that's signage. 3609 Westbrook is being removed. And that's all of the cases on the consent agenda. Those are the items proposed to be voted on all at once. If there is anyone in opposition to any of those cases, again, please raise your hand. I'll read through them one more time, just to make sure. That's 2005 Russell Street, 1300 Greenwood Avenue, 2713 Woodlawn Drive, 2200 18th Avenue South is removed, 1311 7th Avenue North, 510 to 512 Monroe Street, 209 Broadway, and then 3609 Westbrook Avenue has been removed. And that is all of the items. Staff recommends approval of the items on the consent agenda with the applicable conditions, finding that the applications meet the design guidelines of their respective overlays.
Give me just 1 second.
Just to clarify, 8 and 9 are both coming off the consent agenda, correct?
8, and I believe there was a hand raised for 9.
Right, so that will come off the
So
consent
that will
agenda
come
and be
off the
heard at the
consent.
end of the agenda, is that
Correct,
right?
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I did see Melissa take that person out, but it will be heard at the end of the agenda, correct? Okay, just wanted to be clear on that. Okay. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the revised consent agenda.
Yes, Commissioner Price, Vice Chair Stewart. All in favor of the motion? Okay, any opposed? Seeing none, that passes. And we do have 5, which meets the quorum, and also concurring votes. So just want to be sure we have that down. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Ann?
It's just a reminder about the procedures for the hearings. First, staff will present a summary of the project. Then the applicant, including all members of their team, has 10 minutes to present, for up to 10 minutes. They can ask to save 2 minutes of this time for rebuttal. The commission may grant that 2 minutes rebuttal if time remains from that original 10 minutes. After the applicant presents, there's time for public comment. Each member of the public has 2 minutes to speak. And groups that have contacted historic zoning staff ahead of time may speak for up to 5 minutes. Let's see. The commission may ask follow-up questions of any presenter or member of the public at the end of their presentation or comment, as well as during its own deliberations. And the response time for these questions does not count against time allotments. Once the public hearing is closed, applicants and members of the public cannot initiate exchanges with the commission during its deliberation period without an invitation from the commission to speak.
Thank you, Liz Legal. Also, I do see a council member here. Can I ask, or? You will, okay. I was going to ask if I had to suspend the rules. Thank you, council member. Okay. All right. Next on the agenda.
Hello, in this case is 905 North 12th Street, which is a violation demolition without a permit. So this is the house built in 1913. A permit was issued for an addition in June of 21, and then a permit was issued for siding replacement in February of 24. The addition was begun and a foundation inspection was performed on June 3rd of 24, and it was going well. On Friday afternoon, July 12th, a neighbor reported possible excessive demolition. After staff inspection, a stop work order was issued. And you can see here in the picture, part of the old house had been reframed, that hip on the back of the original house, and in the front, you can see that it has been completely demolished down to the foundation. Staff recommends disapproval of full demolition of the house at 905 North 12th Street, finding that all demolition does not meet Section 3 of the design guidelines for demolition or Section 17.40.420E of the Ordinance for Economic Hardship. Staff further recommends that the permits already issued be rescinded, and the commission require that any new construction on the site be a reconstruction of the main massing of the historic building using the application for the addition to meet Section 7E5 of the Commission's Rules of Order. No preservation permits may be reissued or additional preservation permits be issued until the new construction has been completed and received an approval from the Commission in terms of meeting the reconstruction condition.
Scott, you done? Yes, okay, just thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions to staff at the moment? Okay, we might have some questions in terms of how this timeline goes. I have a general question, is, and reading through the recommendations, so again, for public hearing, permits expire 12 months after issue date, is that correct?
That is correct, I believe.
That's correct if no work is started.
Got it, okay. Let's make sure we give that a little bit of education to the public. Okay, is the applicant here? Yes. Please come forward.
Good afternoon, council. Thank you. Good afternoon, council. My name is David. I'm one of the owners of the property. David Morgan. Unfortunately, in this situation, there was a simple accident that happened. This was not the intention or the plan. We had been building the project according to the plans, the back addition, that's units. There's 5 units on this property. We have A, B, C, and D. D and E have been going according to plan. B and C have as well. A, unfortunately, has been more difficult than we foresaw. In the midst of this, miscommunication with the contractors, and they were trying to fix and tie in the B and C unit with the front A unit, and in doing so, was more liberal with demolition. That was the intent, and then unfortunately led us to this situation as we are currently.
Commissioners, do you have any questions to the applicant at the moment?
Yes. The staff report recommends reconstruction of the demolished house.
Yes, sir.
Is that acceptable for the ownership group to move forward with?
Yeah, we're happy to build it back as it was. Would like to have a little clarity on some of the notes in regards to rescinding of what permits and what all that language means, because there's the master permit and then there's the 5 units that we're building. So would love clarity on that, but yes.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Give us time. We may, after we go into discussion, but just hang there for a minute. I mean, you're
Yes, ma'am.
welcome to sit down and then, yeah. I'll open public hearing. Please come forward. And anyone else, just be ready to step up on the podium. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Hi, Elizabeth Finch, neighbor. I have watched this home be systematically dismantled from February through present day. And so I stand before you with a heavy heart, compelled to speak out against the developers responsible for the build at this property. This once proud 100-plus-year-old home stood as a testament to our city's rich history and the character of the Eastwood neighborhood. Yet, in a stunning act of disregard for our community and its heritage, it was systematically dismantled and destroyed under the guise of progress. The developers behind this project may attempt to present themselves as benevolent, claiming their upzoning efforts will benefit East Nashville by turning a single-family home into 5 units, but make no mistake, their motivations are anything but altruistic. This is not a project born out of a desire to enhance our community. Rather, it is a calculated move in speculative real estate. They purchased this property in 2021, sat on their plans for years as the original home languished, and engaged in attempts to sell off the site plans for a quick profit, evading any true commitment to the project. Since beginning actual work, their dismantling of the historic home has far exceeded the scope of their permits. What started as a permit for a rear siding exemption led to the complete destruction of the structure between February and July. Their carelessness has resulted in the loss of a piece of our neighborhood's character that cannot be replaced. Their actions speak volumes about their priorities. They have sought multiple exemptions, including paying into the sidewalk fund instead of fulfilling their obligation to build a sidewalk, a fundamental piece of infrastructure that would benefit all who live and walk in this neighborhood. These are not the actions of developers who care about the well-being of the community. Their disregard extends to the surrounding community as well. By working outside of permitted hours, they've shown a repeated lack of respect for the residents in adjacent affordable housing apartments, many of which are families. This project, catering to high-income residents, will only deepen inequality in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Finch. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Please come forward. And if you are, please be close to the podium so that we can keep public hearing moving. Thank you.
Is this on? Hey, I'm Chris Wright. I'm one of the developers on the project, one of the owners. Am I allowed to speak as well?
And this is a time for public comment,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I don't know if they've reserved time for rebuttal.
Yep. That would be reserved time for rebuttal. And
Okay.
I don't know how many minutes. You know, when the applicant, and again, for public here is when the applicant is here, and if you're part of the applicant team, you need to speak during that time and not during public hearing.
Okay.
Okay?
Understood.
Yeah, but you may have 2 minutes a rebuttal, probably. I didn't keep track of time, but Melissa says you do. So when I close public hearing, you can come back if we have questions.
Okay, thank you.
Good? Thank you. Continue public hearing. Otherwise, we will close public hearing.
Well, you're not exactly closing public hearing, you're letting them do the rebuttal, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, right. And is it Mr. Wright? We have closed public hearing, and legal says that you may come up now and use your 2-minute rebuttal. Oh, just 1 minute.
Okay.
Commissioner?
Point of order, I think this needs to happen while the public comment
Correct.
is still open.
That's what I was trying to say, you're not closing public hearing,
Oh,
you're letting
okay.
him do his rebuttal. And
I
then
see.
public hearing will be
Gotcha.
closed.
All
Yes.
right. Public hearing is not closed. We are suspending the rules on that. Okay.
Okay.
Please, thank you.
All right, no problem. So my name is Chris Wright. I'm one of the owners of this project. Partnered with David Morgan. We've hired Tim 06 to build this project out for us. So I live here in East Nashville. Over the last 6 years as a developer, I have worked in the historic overlay, and I've always considered historic our partners. A partner, I consistently reach out to Jenny Warren, to Melissa, to Robin. I personally know David Price. We live in the neighborhood. Our kids went to school together. Where I'm going with this is I heard our neighbor next door, and, you know, I hear your concerns, but I want y'all to know that the rapport and the trust that you guys have in us to take these historic homes and bring them back to life, like that is more important than any business transaction. You know, I know that we've probably lost some trust with you guys on this project. And, you know, I'm sorry that this happened on a project that I'm a part of. But, you know, I just want you to know that our relationship with Historic, it's important to me. It's always been important to me. We value you guys. We value our neighbors. We're trying to take care of you guys too with the fence and everything. We've always wanted to work with you just as we continue to want to work with Historic. All that to say, look, we trust whatever your guidance is on this, whatever your decision is on this. We want to move forward and, you know, hopefully rebuild trust and rapport with all of you and also with our neighbors. You know, look, talk to us anytime. If there's anything that we can do to work together to address your concerns, please bring it to us.
Okay, thank you. We may have some more questions for you. Okay, close public hearing, I think, all right. Legal says that's correct now. And we are now in discussion.
Am I allowed to ask Mr. Wright a question? May I ask Mr. Wright a question?
Hi.
Could you explain, in your view, what happened here? Why the home was destroyed?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you. So my portion of my part of the partnership is I do acquisitions. So what I primarily do is I look for opportunities for development, and I work with the surveyors, the architects, with Historic. I'm on all of the front end, the pre-construction piece. So so I'd have to defer to my partners on this to give to give more context to what happened.
Okay. Do you know if the sidewalk's going to get built? Like your neighbor requested?
Yeah, so our understanding is, so the issue with the sidewalks, so my understanding is the sidewalk bill it's not in place anymore. So we did go through the proper channels to, the issue was that if we put sidewalks in, it's a huge cost for us, not the sidewalks. We're happy to put the sidewalks in. We'd have to put in curb and gutters, and the nearest downstream inlet. Is this too much?
Mr. Wright, that's not our purview.
Okay.
So I know that was a question by the commissioner, and I just wanted
yes, ma'am.
to give that some thought for her.
Well, I just wanted to get some sort of context about trying to ease her situation.
Right.
Or her angst.
Yeah,
This gentleman has, your partner has
sure.
has something to say. Go ahead.
I think the major question here is how did this come about? You know, this is really tough for our commission because this continues to come up. And it's like, how do we help, how do we assist in a better way for this not to happen?
For sure, absolutely.
And because you are a developer and you come in and if you pay close attention to your contractors, how did this happen?
And before, if I could interject.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a minute, before you start an explanation, I want to get a clear picture of this timeline. So it sounds like the demolition of this structure started in February and continued on for several months. It didn't happen all at once. Is that true?
Yeah, so the project has had multiple phases in the sense of, so we have 5 units there.
Okay, but that's not really the question. The question is, what's the timeline of the demolition? Did it happen all at once?
No, ma'am.
Or did it happen over several months?
No, ma'am, there's been multiple stages. Okay, so units B and C, which are the addition of the 3 attached units on the front, have a complicated elevation that has a lowered foundation that had to be dug into the earth in order to do the foundation. In order to do that and build the roof line and tie that into the existing house, the way in which that got sequenced was we did an initial demolition in terms of like taking out the inside of the house. We found asbestos, we had that abated, and we had multiple things done in that regards to figure out the kind of the state of the house as it stood and what needed to be happening from a foundation point, in all those details. So that was kind of the first part of the project. So that started simultaneously, the two back new construction units, which have nothing to do with this, but those were being built at the same time. As all that and utilities were happening, then we circled back around to, after we finished the foundation on the two addition units, B and C, and started framing those. We started working forward to the A unit, which is the historic unit that's there. And so the demolition, to answer your question, happened kind of in a few stage process. There was the initial site prep demo when we first started construction, which was trees and everything else. Then there was the asbestos in the interior demo. And then we had a stage that was the exterior and roofing, and then realized we had multiple problems with termite damage and wood rot and a bunch of other things. And then we had some elevation issues where we had to get elevations revised and come back to council and submit that in terms of windows and a few things to tie all that together, simultaneously doing the foundation for B and C in order to work towards the front. And then once we started working towards the front is when this happened with a miscommunication with the contractor.
Is it correct that you also did not get a building permit to demo?
No, that's not correct. The scope of the historic renovation
Was, but your contractor demoed without permission, so.
You're so, okay. I'm understanding what you're saying. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
You're talking about when this incident happened? Yeah. Yes. This was a miscommunication that happened with the framers that were on site trying to frame and tie in all that was existing with the roof line. And then that led to them, like I said, being more liberal with demo than they should have been.
Okay.
I have one more question. At any point during these multiple months, did you get back in touch with, with Metro Historical to communicate your problems, try to find a resolution?
I believe so, because we reached out in regards to some window and elevation changes that we had at one point, which I had to have the architect redo drawings and resubmit for administrative approval. And then we'd had foundation inspections and framing inspections for the D and the E units. I believe if you go back and look at the historic permits from that, that is gone according to what the normal historic guidelines are. So there had been communication with historic for all the project as it had gone along.
It just appears to me as though the depth and breadth of this demolition didn't happen in a day, which concerns me.
Yeah, so I don't know if he has pictures from sometime in the summer, but the initial demo, was the siding removal and all the asbestos and all the interior. And so then at that point, the house was basically the framing without any sheathing on it, and the roof line and everything was braced. And so at this point, when we were tying together framing from the B and the C unit to the A unit, what was currently existing of the A unit at that point was the existing framing at that point as it landed. As it was landed, like existing framing as what was remaining. So to answer your question, like you asked earlier, if like this had been done in stages since February, like I said, we had removed everything and then had this skeleton and was like, okay, this goes back to a lot of details, but tying the roof line together with the addition of the B and C unit became incredibly complicated. And in order to do that properly, we had to figure out the elevation, the finished floor elevation of the B and C units. In order to do that properly, we actually had to do all the site prep and digging to get all like the infrastructure and everything in. So there was this domino effect where from the outside perspective, it may seem like the A unit got pushed along, but the reality of it was we were doing things strategically in order to set it up so we could tie everything in and get it built properly. And then the structure as it was when the demo happened was just the framing.
It sounds to me, thank you for the explanation.
For sure.
That this was a well-intentioned project, not unlike many that we see before us a lot, that a series of misfortunate events happened, and here we are.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
mistakes happen. We see miscommunications between contractors and developers a lot. It's not usually, sometimes it is to this scale. I mean, we've seen these kinds of situations happen where maybe a framing crew shows up one day and does entirely what they're not supposed to do, which is what it sounds like happened here.
Yes, yes, unfortunately.
I think, though, that the ownership team here has presented it's an unfortunate thing, but here we are, we're stuck with it. What's the solution? The solution is to reconstruct the historic home as it was, based on plans that will be submitted to staff for approval. They may come to us again for approval. I think we've got the context and understand what happened, and I think our job now is to take the next step to solve the immediate problem that's before us.
I mean, I agree, but I think one of the things that you need to note in here is that all existing permits are rescinded. Correct?
Noted.
I mean, that's staff's recommendation.
Right.
I noticed in staff's recommendations that all existing permits are rescinded.
And I would love to ask if there could be a reconsideration, at least especially for the D and E units, the back two units, which we have built according to plans, have received all the approvals, and we are at this point 2 weeks from being completed and being ready to get a UNO and provide a quality unit that I know our neighbors are really upset. I'm really sorry. We've tried to communicate. We really have. I live in East Nashville as well. Chris and I are literally residents. I take it very seriously. I think anybody who's ever dealt with me would say that I'm a fair and honest and very approachable person. And so if you have problems, please come to me and talk to me. We've tried to do the right thing, but unfortunately things go wrong and you have to own it and say, hey, we want to make it right. I would like to make it right. I would like to finish.
Madam Chair, if we don't have any more questions for the applicant.
Yes,
I think we can,
thank you.
We're in discussion here.
Yeah, we are in discussion.
Okay,
Thank
that's
you.
fine.
Also, for discussion, he's talking about some other lots, or that's not what we're looking at. What we're looking at is 905 North 12th Street. So I'm a little fuzzy on what he's talking about in terms of the other units.
It's the same lot. So what he's talking about is what you have done in the past is, because often this happens when someone gets a permit for an addition. So they got a permit for an addition and what you would consider an outbuilding. That's another 2 units in the back. So what you've done in the past is you've rescinded those permits for the addition and or the outbuilding. So no more work can happen. The front building has to be reconstructed. And then once that's done, they come back to you, they get your approval that that was done the way it was supposed to have been done. And then at that point, you can decide whether or not you want to reissue the other permits.
But clearly, the whatever permits are standing are rescinded.
It's really just one permit, right?
It's one permit for 5 units. That's up to you. That's part of our recommendation, but that's part of your decision.
Okay.
I mean, basically what I'm hearing is that, according to staff recommendation, all work stops until this historic structure is reconstructed.
If you follow the recommendation with your motion, that's what would happen.
Okay.
And it seems to me in other similar cases, that's how I think what you're saying is that's generally how we've handled this, is everything stops until the building is rebuilt, and then with approval from the commission or at staff level, then work can continue.
Perhaps to add further clarity, these new buildings exist because an application was made for an addition, not for new construction necessarily. I think you could look at this in a couple of different ways, but that's the way I look at it. So without the existing historic construction that's there, this really wouldn't have happened. An application is viewed in total, not as pieces and parts. As inconvenient and costly as that might be to the applicant, that is certainly one way to look at it.
Sorry to interrupt, but could I clarify something? I think what they're talking about is they have a separate permit for the outbuilding, and we have told them that they could continue work on the outbuilding. So there are, I think, 2 units in the outbuilding, and so that's what they're wanting to clarify, that they can continue that.
Okay, so the outbuilding is unit, what, D and E?
Yes,
ma'am. Okay, all right.
But that's on a separate permit?
And on a separate permit, and it is not attached to the historic structure?
Okay,
Okay.
so I think we did come back to base on that.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Okay. It's what's before us?
Yeah, so there's a couple extra comments in discussion. Certainly, I think one of the applicants, when I refer to the applicant, I'd say as a team, whether it be the framers, the contractor, or whomever was involved in the project, trust is certainly gone at this point. This is not a flippant or accidental shift of the backhoe bucket and, we knocked the corner off the house. I mean, it's gone. And that doesn't happen by accident. It might happen by miscommunication, but I wouldn't call it an accident. It's an incident. And I wasn't there, and I don't know, and I don't think we can find out, but certainly it seems that difficulty turned into a unilateral decision to remove difficulty. And I think that's very unfortunate. We lost a 100-year-old structure, and I have a feeling that there may be some considerable back and forth with the staff, and I think we as the commission need to make sure we're very clear on what reconstruction looks like, and there's not any question to that, and perhaps, I'm sure the staff, it's not the first time we've done this, but in terms of the trim around the windows, the method in which they're constructed, the material with which they're constructed, how the siding is done, all of those things, this applicant, in my mind, doesn't get the benefit that we might afford to another applicant because this happened in terms of replacement of like kind and to reconstruct this structure. I would certainly, you gain the benefit of perhaps putting some sheathing on something or whatever else, but I think I just admonish the applicant and the team that this is unacceptable, and I certainly feel compelled to use whatever leverage that we have to make sure that this is replaced, and whatever has to happen because of that is that's the fallout from miscommunication, if you will.
Thank you, Commissioner. That was a deep thought. And I think that's very clear to us here on the commission, because we do see this and we take it seriously. We always try to prevent these things to happen, but they do, especially in our city. And I think when we have public hearing like this, is that we hope that other contractors and other developers will hear what happens. And, there's not a big penalty about it, but it's like you said, if there is some kind of judgment call that we can make that is notable to a developer, we're going to do it.
Well, I think you're addressing it very well, Ben. It's like this happens, and so what prevents the next developer from finding so many problems with their project? Oops, we demolished it by accident. And not saying that y'all did that, but some developers would do that. And so I'm just, I agree 100% with what Ben had to say. And, but it's very concerning, so.
Madam Chair, with respect to, if there's no further discussion, I guess. With respect to 905 North 12th, and I'm going to refer to the site plan for lack of any other understanding of how the units are named or whatever else, that's part of the record here. So with respect to 905 North 12th, I recommend approval of the staff's recommendation, which would be a reconstruction to the satisfaction of the staff and the commission of the historic asset that would require pause of work on units 2 and 3, as noted on the site plan. 4 can continue as previously stated here by the staff, and that'll do it.
Thank you for the motion. Commissioner Mosley, is there a second? There is a second by Commissioner Cashin.
One point of
And discussion.
clarification, though. Looks like there's pretty substantial evidence of what was there before.
Your mic.
Seems like there's pretty substantial evidence of what was there before. So I think Commissioner Mosley's prior comment about getting the detailing the way it was before rather than standard, more contemporary detailing would be an important part of that.
Duly noted, Vice Chair. Any other discussion before the motion? Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion? Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes.
The next case is 2223 30th Avenue South. The applicant requests commission approval for work done differently than the preservation permits for a rear addition and historic roof reconstruction at this property. A rear addition was approved and permitted administratively in March of 2024, and in May of 2024, the Metro Historic Zoning Commission approved partial roof demolition and reconstruction for the historic roof on the historic house. On July 24th, 2024, MHZC staff received an inspection request from the applicant for a rough framing inspection. During the inspection, our inspector found that the rear addition was not constructed according to the permitted plans and that wall height had been added to the historic house during the roof reconstruction without approval. The applicant requests to keep the work as constructed. On this slide, you can see the permitted left elevation of the addition on the top of the slide and the project as constructed in the image at the bottom of the slide. Staff finds that the addition as constructed does not meet the design guidelines in terms of height and scale and dormer design for the reasons outlined in the staff report. On this slide, you can see the permitted right elevation on the top and the project as constructed in the image on the bottom of the slide. The applicant was permitted to remove the historic roof and reconstruct the roof to the same dimensions, form, and pitch as the historic roof. No other changes to the historic house were allowed under this commission approval and preservation permit. While the roof was removed and reconstructed to the same dimensions, form, and pitch per the permit, prior to constructing the new roof, the applicant added approximately 1 foot 2 inches of wall height to the top of the walls of the historic house. Staff finds that altering the historic wall height of the historic house to accommodate a new addition does not meet the design guidelines. On this slide, you can see the historic house before work was conducted in the image on the left of the screen, and the historic house after the wall height was added on the right of the screen. No changes to the window or door openings on the historic house were approved under either preservation permit for the project. However, when the roof was reconstructed, changes were made to the historic openings. The historic rectangular opening in the right side gable filled was replaced with 2 square windows. And the historic rectangular window opening in the left side gable filled was replaced with 1 square window opening. Staff finds that the constructed openings do not have historic proportions nor locations and therefore do not meet the design guidelines. Also, staff finds that the original gable-filled windows were historic openings and therefore altering their size or location does not meet the design guidelines. So staff recommends disapproval of the project as constructed, finding that the project as constructed does not meet the design guidelines for the Hillsborough West End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. Staff recommends the violation be corrected with the following items to be completed within 90 days of the commission's decision. And that's number one, that all wall heights on the historic house are to be returned to their original heights, which according to the plans submitted for the addition was 10 feet. The rear addition is to be removed and reconstructed to match what was permitted in the preservation permit. Number three, that all gable window openings are to be constructed in their historic locations and proportions as shown on the permit when the historic roof is reconstructed. And the front dormers are to be reconstructed to their original dimensions, form, and pitch as shown on the permit when that roof is reconstructed. I know the applicant is here as well, and happy to take questions if they come up.
Thank you, Joseph. Okay, applicant. Red light. I think we should just leave it on.
Good afternoon. I've been working with
Please,
Mr. Joseph.
please give your name.
Oh, sorry, Steve Alvarez, owner slash contractor. Good afternoon. I've been working with Mr. Joseph, respect him a lot, and I respect your staff a lot as well. I know they're doing their job as far as, maintaining your guidelines. I'm not here. I don't have any connections. I don't have any, so I'm not asking for any special treatment. I'm not here to change your guidelines. The issue we had with the raising the roof, we had 9-foot ceilings on the bottom, 7-foot ceilings on the second floor, if you will. So what we wanted to do, and it's actually currently the same height as the original plan that was approved. If we were to measure inside, it's actually the same height, measures the same. So what we're trying to do is, take a little bit from the top from the first floor, bring it down to 8 feet. So it'll give us a little bit on the top. Mr. Joseph is correct. It did cause us to raise it a little bit based on the fascia. But in measuring, it's a total of 3 inches difference. Again, I know you guys have your guidelines. I understand. As far as the window placements, I'm all for placing them how staff recommends. I don't have a problem or see an issue with that at all. I apologize for that mistake. The pitch roof actually, versus the gables, it's actually constructed to how it was originally. If Mr. Joseph could confirm that, what it had originally versus the gables, and that, again, my fault with the framers. Communication there was, what you're not to do is you're not to raise this at all. But they took the liberty to change the gables versus what was there. And their understanding was that we were trying to keep it to what was original. So they went ahead with that same roof line that was kind of there before. That's the reason for that. But I'm just asking that, again, I know you rely on your staff. I have respect for them, what they do. I'm just asking for consideration for financial issues if we have to redo that. And two, I know there's probably not any neighbors here, but we've gotten so many comments from neighbors thanking us for, taking on the house and doing what we're doing. And they all love the look of it, the what's being done to it. And again, we didn't mean to do this to, step on any toes or not think that staff is not important or their comments or their, it wasn't like that at all. And I know it's hard to just say, I'm sorry, but it wasn't done that way to say, let's do it and then ask for forgiveness. It wasn't like that at all. But again, I just wish that you'd be able to see the pictures of what it is now versus what was before. And again, I'm all for rechanging the windows, however Mr. Joseph and staff want them. My concern too, though, is in lowering that 3 inches, You've got very, very old walls from the original house, and I think Mr. Joseph can confirm. Honestly, it gets to a point where if you're undoing the roof, you know, we may have an issue of damaging the existing walls on the first floor because of how old it is. So, again, I think, you know, to get it back to down the, you know, and I'm guessing we would have to confirm measurements, but we've remeasured, and again, it's a difference of 3 inches. Getting it down to that versus running the risk of damaging what's already there. And just to confirm, we did build the gables because we were trying to save them when we were taking them out, but they just crumbled. And they were built to exact dimension. I think Mr. Joseph was just saying if we were to have to redo the roof, obviously build those back to the dimensions, but they are currently what they were originally, dimension-wise.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant at the moment?
I do have a couple clarifying questions. I'm not very smart, but I'm struggling with 3 inches versus, I think it was, Joseph, you had said 14?
Yeah, I believe we measured 1 foot 7 inches. I know there was some discussion in the field about how they had lowered the wall height before adding some wall height. But you can see here in this side by side, it's more than 3, just before and after. And I believe we measured 1 foot 7 was the difference.
Thank you. Sorry to talk over you.
No, you're good.
I'm just going baseline with where the top of the roof is and the gutter and everything with the front porch. And I look at where it was. Granted, this is not exactly the same angle, but where it was and where it is, that looks like more than 3 inches.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe there's not a
we
question.
measured it more than 3 inches.
Maybe there's not a question there. I just wanted to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving.
I think Mr. Alvarez was talking about inside ceiling height.
Correct.
Oh,
That might
I
be
see.
3 inches.
Yes, I'm talking
which
about.
is a separate issue and not really our concern, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I because I was confused by that. And my eyes tell me that's more than 3. And you know, your buyer, your residence, the inside and outside is really we don't get into determining that. It does matter on the outside, but how it feels on the inside is a little bit less of where we have influence. So the other question that I have, and either Mr. Alvarez or, is that the house, as photographed in our report, doesn't show a rear addition on it. Was the project stopped before that was built, or is it not to be built? There was a comment about, I think I heard you say that you reconstructed the roof with there's a gable, you know, there's a pop-up.
A pop-up.
That was historic, which wasn't what the plan was, but if it was just a reconstruction and there's not going to be an addition out the back, in my mind, those are two different things, but I didn't want to project on your project what may or may not happen or what your intent might be.
Yeah, so it did have, the existing house did have a pop-up on the back. We just pretty much extended it closer towards the back of the house.
And so in this picture on the bottom, the project is still awaiting the rear addition that will.
No, sir. Yes, sir.
This is it.
Yeah, so the existing pop-up came up to where kind of like that first window is there, if you will.
Uh-huh.
That's how the existing house was. So we just extended it out.
And so in your original and approved application, there won't be, or am I just not seeing this right? I'm looking at a side elevation and something that's like a 3/4 of the way around, and there won't be an addition out the back of it?
No, this is it.
There was an existing 1-story rear addition, so their permit was just to add an upper level to that 1-story. So the bottom level that's there in the image, that was existing before they purchased the house. That was an older addition, and so they were just adding a gable roof to that and some dormers. That was all that their addition was, and so. But their upper level addition, they built it differently and was permitted.
I see. So I mean, I'm looking at that drawing and I look at that picture and those two things aren't anywhere close to near each other. I mean, in terms of construction, okay, I just.
Yes.
Yeah, what
I'm clear
happened
now.
was my framers extended that instead of reconstructing it to the gable, so they just extended the.
Okay, I think I understand now, more, I understand.
And if I could go back, I misspoke. I said 1 foot 7 inches. 1 foot 2 inches was the difference in height that we measured. Just wanted to clarify that.
Did I close public hearing already? I can't even remember. I haven't opened it yet. We're still at the applicant level, okay.
We've not had any public hearing on this yet.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That was just questions to the applicant. We get involved with those questions, so here we are. Open public hearing.
Hi, my name's Raina Beach, and my husband and I live across the street from this house. We just wanted to say that since we've moved into our house in the beautiful neighborhood that is Hillsborough West End, this house has been empty and severely neglected. And we, along with, I know many of our other neighbors, are thrilled, like Steve said, about what they're doing and that they are fixing it up and there's going to be a new family living in it. And we think what they're doing is fantastic. I think what's been noted about restoring the historic windows on those side gables, we would be thrilled to see that happen, but otherwise it looks fantastic and we are very pleased. So I just wanted to let you all know that.
Thank you, appreciate you being here. Anyone else? Okay, close public hearing.
What we have here is another case of where construction happened that was not different from what was permitted. It's very clear, open, shut, kind of a clear case that we've seen before. I appreciate the applicant's presentation and his neighbor's comments. But the way it works here is that staff and the commission approve a certain set of drawings, certain set of plans, and if those are going to be changed because of conditions changing in the field once construction starts, the process has to stop and plans need to be revised and go back to staff, back to the commission. That didn't happen here, so I don't see that we really have many options other than to approve the staff recommendation in this case. Are there any other comments or questions, or no? With that, with respect to 2223 30th Avenue South, I move for approval of the staff recommendation.
There's a motion. Second by Commissioner Cashin, all in favor? Any opposed? Hearing, seeing none, that motion passes. Applicant, continue to work with staff, please. Thank you.
Okay, next up is 3816 Englewood Circle South. This is a contributing structure in the Englewood Place Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. This project came to us as an application for a screen porch, but staff soon discovered unpermitted work. So this application now includes a request to leave the enclosed side porch as is. When this overlay was designated in 2016, the house had an open side porch. Building permits were pulled in 2017 for interior work. MHZC staff verified that the scope of work did not include exterior work beyond siding replacement and determined that no preservation permit was needed. Staff notified the applicant to contact MHZC if the scope changed and signed off ignore on the building permit, indicating that no further review was required. As you can see here, the porch was fully enclosed, work that should have been reviewed by our office and would have required a preservation permit. The property has since changed hands and the new owners were unaware that the work was unpermitted. The design guidelines do permit the enclosure of side porches where the historic form, opening, and features of the porch remain visible and prominent, and the enclosure has an open design. The intent is for the final appearance to clearly read as a porch that has been enclosed. Successful porch enclosure designs typically retain the original porch posts and add windows and/or glass doors between, sometimes including low knee walls or panels below. Here are some examples of permitted side porch enclosures. To resolve this violation, staff recommends that plans be provided within 90 days, showing a design that meets the design guidelines. Moving on to the proposed addition, the applicant is requesting to add a rear screen porch that meets the guidelines except for two factors. It steps wider than the historic house and is closer than 20 feet to the existing garage. The proposed design steps 3 feet 11 inches wider than the historic house. The addition is being shifted to the left to move it away from an existing garage, which sits 18 feet from the back of the house. Given that the house is slightly shifted on the lot, that the wider portion is a one-story screen porch, and that the wider portion is so modest at less than 4 feet, staff finds that the request to step wider is appropriate in this situation. Regarding the reduced separation, the proposed porch will overlap the existing garage for a distance of about 2 feet. For that small of an overlap, the two structures will be approximately 6 feet apart. Staff finds that this could be appropriate in this case, given the shallowness of the overlap, the modest depth of the addition, and the existing footprints. Additionally, the section that overlaps is an open carport on the garage and a covered stair on the addition, so not solid massing. Staff has two separate recommendations for this property and suggests that the commission may want to make two separate motions. First, staff recommends approval of the proposed rear screen porch addition with the condition that the materials are all approved, finding that it meets the design guidelines. And secondly, staff recommends disapproval of retaining the enclosed side porch as constructed, finding that it does not meet sections 6A1 and 13, 6B2, and 6D. Staff recommends that the violation be corrected by requiring the plans for correction following the guidance of the staff recommendation be submitted within 90 days and work on the approved design is completed by March 3rd, 2025. I know the applicant is here and wishes to speak. Also, you should have received some public comment from neighbors. If you have questions for me, I'm available.
Thank you, Jenny.
My name is Martin Wick. I'm the architect for this project. This is kind of a weird situation. In the 12 years that I've been working this with the commission, I've never had a violation come up like this. And I've certainly measured a lot of projects that did not meet the guidelines. So I'm not exactly sure where the best place to start here is, but I think reiterating what the neighbors around them said in their letter, this is a really difficult case, but these owners had nothing to do with the violation. There was no outstanding permit for them to be able to even know that there was a problem here. And the only reason it was found is because we tried to submit a completely unrelated project to historic, a small project for approval. And suddenly they're about to get hit with an additional project that they will have to complete that they had nothing to do with the mistake that created this. We looked back through the permit history. It was started in 2017, as mentioned, as an interior rehab. There are 2 framing violations on Metro's inspections, which mention that there were exterior walls built without sill plates. No one else ever checked up on it. The permit just expired. And so it was just allowed to stand. And then it was sold 2 years after that to the new owners. Again, no way for them to know that there was a violation. And so at this point, they're coming into a very small project and essentially being told they have to almost probably double their budget, because to do this correctly, they're going to have to put a bunch of windows in there, and windows are pretty expensive to do, to buy and to fill in a porch like this. And so I think this sets a really difficult precedent for historic. If there's a chance that you go to get a permit for a completely unrelated project, and you might find out that someone did something that was a violation, and now you're required to fix it, I think that will potentially lead owners, especially for smaller projects, to do exactly what the previous developer did and try to sneak work past historic. Because for one, if it's a small project already, they might not even be able to afford to do the work that you're going to require of them. And so I think this is a difficult situation. It's a little different than the previous two violations where we can go and get the people that are violating the guidelines and tell them they have to fix it. This owner had nothing to do with it. They had no way to know that this violation was on the house. And so now if they're told that they have to fix it, it seems like the wrong person to go after for a violation. And I know the permits are assigned to the house and not to the owners. But there was a chance when those inspections were made and someone noted that there was exterior work going on. That was a chance to potentially catch this violation then. Now does not seem like the appropriate time to force a new owner to go back and fix it.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The note that you found in the records, that was from codes though, not historic.
So historic specifically mentions that they were not involved with the permit because it was interior work. Metro's framing inspectors went out and disapproved them twice. And then no one ever went out again, which, I mean, that just seems like a huge oversight by someone. And if someone had gone back out, that's probably when this would have gotten caught. But because no one ever went back out, because the permit just expired instead of someone getting a final inspection, there was no way for anyone to know that this had happened without physically being on site. And it just so happens that we're the ones trying to apply for a completely unrelated project, and now it's getting caught.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks.
Wick.
Martin, before you go, this may go on for a minute, but I empathize with your situation because it's really screwy, and I think you make some good points there. And this is really more for discussion, not to be punitive or bring it up, but I think in terms of finding a way through and bringing a house into compliance, the previous owner obviously benefited from more square footage to live in.
Right.
And incorrectly permitting work. And then it was sold, and so they got some financial inurement from that, and then this applicant sort of
they had that
is
space
being
now,
punished twice, I guess,
right.
if you will.
Potentially.
Well, if they're required to fix it, maybe, I'm not sure exactly how that thread runs through there, but it just makes it worse, I guess, if you will. I'm not proposing a solution, I just.
It's a difficult situation for sure. And like I said, I understand that the permit is supposed to follow the house, but it seems really difficult to essentially punish this owner twice, both for purchasing interior square footage that shouldn't have been there in the first place, and then being told they either have to turn it back into a porch or do the work to properly enclose it as would meet the guidelines. Yeah.
Pay for it twice.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I just wanted to point out that this is a very unfortunate case, but from a legal perspective, they have to seek out the seller. And that is the person who did not disclose to them. And if there are damages here, that they need to seek the advice of legal counsel.
Okay.
Okay, for the moment. Thank you, Mr. Wick. And anything else to?
Could I just ask one more question about just kind of the procedure of how this works? So, at this point, the violation is known, and they're not intending to do any work on that side of the house. I don't know if there's a way, permits follow the house. Is there a way for this violation, without requiring the work to be done by this particular owner, for the violation to essentially follow the house? And if anybody ever touches that side porch, the first thing they have to do is fix the violation. But because this was not their fault, I don't know what the wording of all of that or exactly how that works out, but that seems like another potential solution here that doesn't put such a huge burden on the owner, both to fix it and to find the other, whoever sold it to them, whatever they might be doing now. This violation could continue to follow this house until someone proposes more substantial work to the house as well.
I have a comment. This is not our purview, but I would think they would have to disclose when they sell.
And again, they didn't. This owner had no idea. Again, because the
previous
permit
owner didn't disclose to yours, but your owner would have to disclose.
Yes,
to
that
yours.
would at that point would start to follow the house correctly. Again, without being overly punitive to this owner who is currently in a pretty hard spot with this violation.
Okay, we're not done discussion, so. All right, open public hearing. Close public hearing. Oh, did you, council member, we shall acknowledge you.
Thank you. I tried to get up before before you closed it. I wanted to see if there was any opposition here.
So we are not closed yet.
Thank you very much for that. So Councilmember Emily Benedict, this is in District 7 that I represent. I was not aware of this case today. I'm here for another case. I was aware it was on the agenda, but I didn't know the details until I just heard the appellant. I am supportive of the homeowner here. I don't think that that is unattractive. I absolutely see the historic side of things. I understand the position that you're in, but I think the case has been made that this is a hardship for the existing owner. And with that, I just would ask for your, I would ask that you side here with the owner on this case. I appreciate your work, and I'll see you again in just a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. I'm going to give it just one more second. Any other public hearing for any of you? Okay. Thank you again. Close public hearing.
I have to say, I really hate this happened, but I'm much more sympathetic to this case than the two previous ones. And I don't know what's going on in my head. Once again, it's certainly not our purview, but we could maybe encourage the owners to get some relief or recourse against the people that they bought the house from. It's a thought, so they could correct it. Just a thought.
It was a long shot. Let me just be really clear on this recommendation. So, Jenny, with the disapproval of retaining enclosed side porch, was this actually the applicant who brought that to this, or that was just because staff found that as a violation?
We found the violation and let them know that it was an issue and that we needed to bring it before you. And so they are just asking to be allowed to leave it as is.
And as Martin was saying, is that it's really separate. What they wanted was the screened in porch.
Correct.
That is what they came to us for.
Correct.
So this is like okay, just really clear how that is separated, okay? You know, we hate these kind of things, use that word, but if we do whatever decision the commission makes, is we got to be really clear on how we do or don't set precedents for another applicant to come before us. So however the motion is, let's be really clear how we direct that.
As the other commissioners have mentioned, I hate this situation. I hate being put in a position to create hardship for one of my neighbors for something that they didn't do. I don't want to. At the same time, this commission, it's not our job to approve work that's been done, that's not been permitted, not only from the standpoint of our guidelines, but also just from a basic codes and safety perspective. This addition was not, it was lacking sill plates. It could be a fire trap of some sort. I don't know. I mean, I don't see how I could approve letting it remain, knowing not only is it out of compliance with historic zoning guidelines, but also just from a basic safety and codes perspective. Unfortunately for your client, this is the situation that we're in, and I do recommend that hopefully they can find some sort of legal restitution against the former owner. Other than that, I support the sort of bifurcated way to go about approving this. I think the rear screen porch looks like a great addition, but I don't see how we really get around the first recommendation either.
Can I ask one more question? I would just, the only other question would be about the timeline then. Again, because this is work that the owner is going to have to undertake, potentially involving going after someone else for legal, recompense. They might need the money from that recompense in order to do this. 90 days is not very much time to go get that money and then, create new plans. I don't know I have no idea what that timeline should be, but because there are so many other potential legal, avenues involved here, that timeline seems really short to potentially get this work done. And I would like to consider how you might change that. I don't know what that might be. That would be the other thing.
Understood, thank you. And this is something that we've done before, where we take the staff recommendation and extend it, double it. Whatever we might think is acceptable, I think we've done that on a number of occasions, so I'm open to suggestions. I'm happy to even double it 180 days, because I've been involved in legal wranglings over property before on my own house, and I know the pitfalls that can be involved, so.
David, to that end, I've got a couple questions for staff and maybe legal, if necessary. The recommendation, one, is to have something that's agreeable. In other words, like, this is in compliance. That's what the 90 days is for. Am I reading that correctly? And so, in taking the applicant's position into account, to pay somebody extra to go seek, just for the privilege of going to court with somebody else, I'm curious if the staff in this case would accept some photographic evidence of similar projects or something along those lines that would arm the applicant with something to go chase somebody with, and that they wouldn't be required to provide the full complement of additional drawings, or that something of a sketch would be sufficient to meet the requirements of the first part of that condition. And then secondly, I think as a commission, and this is a question for legal, we certainly could rehear a violation case, and if the applicant had made some progress or made an effort to seek recompense from the seller, we would have at that time, the ability to be less punitive. That is within our ability. Let's say we get to March the 3rd, 2025, and there is a case pending or something along those lines. We would then have the ability to extend that if we chose at that time.
I think it could come back before you again.
The first part of it is that they submit plans, so that it could be as simple as you said. It could be like, we're going to put this size this size windows in here at this point, and I think that's enough for us to understand what's wanted. Then the second part of it is that should be done by March 3rd. I don't think doubling it is going to be enough, quite frankly. So maybe we look at a year. I know that's a long time, but this isn't a violation that is hurting the house. It's not like we're leaving a house wide open. That would be detrimental to the house over time. So it's all, the house is safe and fine. So I think waiting that long wouldn't be. As far as we know, it's safe. Well, yeah, but I mean, it's enclosed.
I guess I'll thank you for those clarifying comments. I will add to that unless we have some, presently, short of this violation case, if we allow the violation to happen, it perpetuates wrong on top of wrong, or not following the rules on top of not following the rules, and that our recourse is gone at that point. As uncomfortable and as much as none of us want to do it to the current applicant and owner, or may not want to do that, maybe that's not really relevant to bringing it into compliance at some point should the house be sold to a future buyer.
I would be concerned about that for the reasons that you stated. I also just want to take one quick opportunity to jump gears for a second. I know there's concern that Metro didn't go back out, but Codes doesn't, and we don't go out just guessing when something's ready to be inspected. We're both waiting for that, in this case, the previous owner, to call and say, we're ready, we've corrected the framing issue, we're ready for you to come back. So that part of it's still on the previous owner. That was still a permit they didn't complete.
And so it would be an open and expired, potentially, I guess we could look it up, but it would be an open and expired application. Okay, thanks.
we will give council member courtesy.
Thank you so much. So I just wanted to add one thing. Certainly, I added my opinion for you based on the facts that were shared, but I wanted to also represent that there's no opposition here. I have heard of no opposition. This is on the edge of the overlay. Nevertheless, it is in the overlay. The violation of 2017 predates my time here on council, rather, and but there is a very active neighborhood association involved right near here, who you may have heard from before or in the past in regards to this particular overlay. No one has reached out to me about that. So I just wanted to represent the people, and so let you know of that in addition to the support that I expressed earlier. Thank you so much. Thanks for allowing me to come back up.
Duly noted. Commissioner Mosley, would you like to try to make a motion? So there's two.
Why I gotta be a bad guy? Just kidding.
Putting you on the spot.
I'm following the sword. Or a sword, maybe not the sword. With respect to 3816 Englewood Circle South, and acknowledging that the staff recommendation is two parts. One is the approval of a proposed rear screen porch addition, meeting the conditions as stated in the staff's recommendation and report, and that would be approved without any other connection, approved and constructed and approved without any other connection to item 2, which would be retaining an enclosed side porch, which was recognized in review of this case as a violation that, based on applicant's presentation given here and other items that have been presented, was predates the current owners and applicants' their knowledge and or they didn't take any action to cause this to happen, but that I would agree with staff's recommendation for disapproval of retaining the enclosed side porch, allowing for some recommendation with guidance from the staff within the 90 days of how to remedy that violation, and that work on the approved design be completed in 12 months' time from today's hearing.
Thank you for that very articulate motion. Is there a second? Commissioner Price has made a second. All in favor of the motion, or? Okay. Any opposed? Any further discussion? No. That motion passes.
May, do you mind if I add just one thing for council member, for the applicants and for others? I know that there's no opposition and this may seem like a minor issue, but the concern is if we don't enforce our rules and our guidelines, when the neighborhood does want us to, that position will be undermined. So that's why what you see is happening.
Okay. Next up.
Next up is 201 to 205 Broadway. It's a vacant lot within the Broadway Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay. This may look familiar to you. In May 2024, the commission disapproved an application for infill at this lot. There was a July application, but that was heard. So now the applicant is back with a revised design. Behind 201 to 205 Broadway is a 10-foot wide unimproved alley. The applicant is currently working with the neighboring property behind it, kind of along 2nd Avenue South, to divide that alley between the two of them. So the applicant would get 5 feet and the neighbor behind would get 5 feet. So the proposed plans show the infill development is extending into this unimproved alley by 5 feet. That's just background information. This is the Broadway facade. The proposed infill has a primary height of 65 feet from grade to the main parapet. The infill also includes a stepped back upper level, which brings the total height to 80 feet. These heights match the maximum heights detailed in the design guidelines and are also consistent with the heights of the historic structures in the immediate context. Note here that there's a stairwell bulkhead that is located within the step back area on the rear towards 2nd Avenue South. The stairwell bulkhead is approximately 9 feet back from the 2nd Avenue South facade. But the design guidelines state that rooftop intrusion should be 20 feet. However, in this case, staff finds that the stairwell bulkhead is appropriate because the lot is shallower than other lots typical on Broadway and because it's sloped to hide its visibility. Here's a 2nd Avenue facade. And here's the context with the other building. Here's the infill in context with the other buildings along Broadway and in context at the corner of 2nd and Broadway. The building to the left would be where Chiefs is currently. Looking at the details of the lower level, the storefront is described as an aluminum operating wall system biparting. Operable wall windows could be appropriate since a minimal profile could result in a large shop windows as seen historically. However, staff recommends approval of the window system and specific design prior to purchase and installation, as not all operable storefront windows are appropriate on Broadway. The drawings indicate that the windows on the mezzanine level will also open and be operable. Staff finds that operable windows, particularly ones that slide open at the mezzanine level, are not seen historically and do not meet the design guidelines. Staff recommends that the mezzanine windows be fixed. The design guidelines state that corner buildings should avoid open corner plazas. At the corner of Broadway and 2nd Avenue is a recessed corner for ticket sales. The applicant is proposing sliding doors to enclose this area, likely for just when the ticket, to enclose it really just when the ticket area is closed. But when it's open, it'll create like an open plaza for the ticket booth. Staff finds that the design of this area does not meet the design guidelines, as the sliding doors are shown in different planes, which is not something that is seen historically. In addition, the design does not continue the storefront design with bulkheads, nor is it defined as a proper entry on the most prominent corner of the building. Staff recommends the applicant design an enclosure more in keeping with the rest of the planned storefront and recommends receipt of the detailed drawing of the corner area prior to issuance of a permit. The mezzanine level at the corner of Broadway and 2nd Avenue has mechanicals just behind the window openings. Since this is such a prominent corner, staff recommends the mechanicals be relocated to a less visible location. Although this area is shown as glass, it will be looking into the back of mechanical equipment and may require vents. The operability of the upper level windows is not known. Operable window walls and sliding windows are not appropriate above the first floor level on the main brick portion of the infill. The commission has not approved such windows in the past and has required that windows above the first floor level have a design and operation that are similar to the historic upper level windows found throughout the district, such as single hung or double hung windows. So here's a rendering of the property from the corner of 2nd and Broadway. And here it is looking down Broadway. So, in conclusion, I won't read all of the all of the text, but staff is recommending approval with the conditions that you see there on the screen. And the applicant is here.
Thank you, Melissa.
Good afternoon, Alex Dickerson, Thompson Burton, 1801 West End Avenue, here on behalf of the applicant. I always hate to be the first application after the violation, so please palate cleanse to the extent you can. I'd also like to reserve 2 minutes for rebuttal, if I may. First of all, we want to thank Melissa and Robin. It has been a long road to get here, what we hope to be the end of this. Lots of design questions. Staff has worked diligently with us. They've helped us where they can, which is all we can ask. And they've been utmost professional. We just want to say thank you to them for helping us to get here. As you know from previous meetings, this site does have some constraints, some geotechnical, just some physical constraints. And you know, the way we look at it is we've presented some challenging aspects to this body, right? We had some procedural questions that we talked about in May. We had some discretion questions, And this commission took the time to hear us and give us feedback. And we can't thank you enough for that, because your candid feedback about the scale and the height was so helpful for us to come back to a redesign. And it saved a lot of time and effort and a lot more before you, hopefully, by giving us that feedback. So we just want to say thank you for that. We're very proud of the project that we have here today. It's not exactly what we proposed at the beginning. We were obviously hoping for a little bit of height and hoping for that public-private partnership. But we have something that I think you're going to be proud of. We have a building that is modern, but fits in with the downtown landscape. It doesn't detract away from any existing contributing historic buildings. And we think it meets the height and scale that this commission would find to be appropriate on 2nd and Broadway. And perhaps most importantly for all of us, it's the final piece of the puzzle of a key intersection, turning a surface parking lot into something that can really contribute to the city. And I think we can all be hopeful and thankful for that aspect. So with that, we'll step back and listen to any public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dickerson. Okay, open public hearing. Close public hearing. Discussion.
So, Mr. Dickerson, do your people approve of the recommendations set forth here?
Yes, Commissioner Mayhaw, we agree with all staff recommendations. We're simply asking for you all to accept staff's recommendation in total.
Thank you so much. And one other comment, there was not to you, it's fine, but there was a public comment from Lauren Morales at Acme Feed and Seed, and I know this is not our purview, but I just want to let you all know how much angst there is down on 2nd Avenue right now in that area. Acme Feed and Seed used to be the #1 drop-off for Uber and Lyft in the city, and they have seen their business drop off exponentially. And for Bottled Blonde, they have taken over the whole sidewalk and blocked everything off. And like I said, I know it's not our purview, but if anybody from the city is listening to this, I wish they would give consideration for not blocking that area, so to help the merchants on not only Lauren Morales, but also the merchants on 2nd Avenue. So.
I'd just like to say how pleased I am that Mr. Dickerson, your clients took our feedback from the May meeting, and obviously there's been a lot of back and forth with staff and behind the scenes that we've not been part of, but I'm really pleased to see how this project has come out, and I wholeheartedly support the revised design that we're being asked to approve today. So thank you.
Yes.
I too, it's been a long journey, and it's nice to be at this point where the staff recommendation is amenable, and I think that we've come a long way. With respect to 201 through 205 Broadway, I move for approval with all staff conditions.
Vice Chair has made motion. Second by Commissioner Mayhaw. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Hearing, seeing none, that motion passes. We are very grateful to have both staff and applicant work together.
The next case is 1207 Paris Avenue. The application is to construct an addition to a contributing house and an outbuilding in the rear yard. The house at 1207 Paris Avenue is a circa 1915 bungalow-style house that contributes to the historic character of the Belmont-Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. The proposed addition extends wider than the historic house on both sides and wraps the historic rear corner on the right side, which staff finds does not meet the design guidelines. On this slide, you can see the two proposed side elevations. Staff finds that the applicant's proposed addition does not meet the design guidelines for multiple reasons, including addition wall heights that are taller than the wall heights of the historic house, a full 2-story flat roof massing attached to a 1 1/2 story historic house, an addition that extends wider than the house, on both sides, and significant alterations to the historic house itself, including the removal of both sides of the historic pyramidal roof in order to convert the historic pyramidal roof to a side gable roof, the removal of the historic chimneys and construction of 3 new non-historic chimneys on the historic house, the removal of large amounts of the rear wall and rear roof of the historic house, including the removal of the historic rear corner on the right side, the removal of both historic windows on the left side of the house to add multiple new openings on both the first level and in the proposed gable field, the removal of both historic windows on the right side of the house to add new door openings and new windows in the proposed gable field. Enlarging both historic windows on the front of the house to convert the window openings to door openings is also proposed, as can be seen in this slide on the front elevation at the top of the screen, and staff does not find that to meet the design guidelines. And they also propose adding a non-historic side porch to the right side of the house to convert the historic front porch to a non-historic wraparound porch, which staff finds does not meet the design guidelines. Staff finds that the proposed scope of demolition and alteration to the historic house does not meet the design guidelines because the existing house is a contributing structure, and the alterations proposed impact character-defining original features of the historic house. Staff finds that the proposed addition does not meet the design guidelines for height and scale, setback and rhythm of spacing, location, roof additions, side additions, removability, roof shape, and proportion and rhythm of openings, as outlined in greater detail in the staff report. The applicant also proposes a 1-story, 680 square foot outbuilding in the rear yard as part of the application. Those elevations are there on the screen. With the condition that the final material selections are approved prior to purchase and installation, staff finds that the outbuilding meets all of the design guidelines for outbuildings. Staff recommends disapproval of the proposed addition and alterations to the historic house at 1207 Paris Avenue, finding that the project does not meet the design guidelines for the Belmont Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. Staff recommends approval of the proposed outbuilding at 1207 Paris Avenue with the following condition, and that's just that the final material selections for foundation, cladding, roofing, windows, and doors are approved prior to purchase and installation. With that condition, staff finds that the outbuilding meets the design guidelines. Happy to take questions, and the applicant is here as well.
Thank you, Joseph. Do I see any eyes for questions? Not at the moment. Thank you, applicant.
Is there a clicker? Hi, my name is Scott Goldman. I'm here on behalf of my family. We're the purchaser of the property, and this is intended to be our personal house. So I just wanted to, I'm going to reserve 2 minutes to hopefully respond to some questions you may have, but I just wanted to kind of take you through who we are, what we're looking to do, and give you some context around our plans that you just saw. So this is our family. We're a family of 4. We moved to Nashville 4 years ago, not pictured there as our golden doodle. And I think it's important to kind of give you a little bit about our background and experience with historic property as you consider our proposal here. We have a track record of not only renovating and building historic property for our personal residences, but also building community. We lived in a neighborhood very similar to 12 South in Chicago. My wife, Jessica, owns the largest dance studio in the city that she established as a community anchor. It's been there for 20 years. 700 kids come through there a year. It's really contributed to the community. We're hopeful to kind of simulate that lifestyle here. I professionally formed a real estate company in 2010, developed historic property all over the country. I've done about 60 projects. A subset of those projects have been in partnership with the National Preservation District, with MPS, and with the State Historic Preservation Office. Those projects use federal historic tax credits. So I'm very familiar in working with historic agencies and working through and collaborating. I generally think tension around design is healthy. You come up with a great solution. I think the issue here's a sample set of some of those projects to give you some context. This is the Garver Feed Mill, Madison, Wisconsin. This was a dilapidated mill that was beyond repair that we restored with the city of Madison. We won several awards from the National Park Service. This is what it looks like on the right today. This is the Hammond Organ Factory in Chicago. You might be familiar with Hammond organs. This was a 16-building project, 160,000 square feet, roof falling in. It's now a thriving community of 60 makers and operators and restored. We won awards from the city of Chicago. This was our personal house in Chicago. This was an 1886 row home. When we purchased this house, you couldn't even walk through it. The plaster was destroyed. The fireplaces were yellow. We fully restored all of those details, replaced the windows and the front door. This is the finished product today. You can see how beautiful and conscientious we are to the historic details. We celebrate those things. We've been looking for a historic home in Nashville to do this. These are your design guidelines for the Belmont-Hillsborough guidelines. I've read these guidelines in detail, and I was inspired because I feel that we're very much aligned in what we're trying to achieve here. We're looking to be a neighborhood asset. This is the first house that you see when you come off of 12 South. You can see it from the street. It is the only house on this block, other than one other, that has not been renovated between 12 South and Belmont. We're looking to contribute to the neighborhood. Most of the homes that get renovated are monstrosities. They're huge additions. Our addition is very sensible. It's less than what's available under the guidelines. We could certainly build more. And there's nothing that we're proposing that the commission does not have the ability or authority to approve. I just want to clarify that and emphasize that. I think that's really important. I understand that the majority additions are these singular additions that go out the way back, but there's nothing in the guidelines that doesn't give the ability to extend the house wider than the existing house or to replace the roof. Staff has taken the position that the pyramid roof is a historic feature that cannot be modified under any circumstance but for adding a couple dormers. And that's simply not the precedent. Okay, this house sits, you can see the red dot there, that is 1207 Paris. The adjacent properties are commercial. Every other house on the block between 12 South and Belmont has been renovated. None of them have a roof structure like what's contemplated here, and none of them have their original roof structures. They've all been modified. While they might have hip roofs or ridge roofs that have been replaced in the form that they were there, they've been expanded and extended. And so I think it's unreasonable to take that approach to this house. The existing house is a 30 by 30 historic house. It actually was a 2-unit house. There were 2 front doors on the front. The historic porch that you see today, those windows are not the historic windows. The windows were taller, and I'll show you a historic photo that shows that. So what we're proposing is an addition that's wider that allows for more yard space instead of these long additions with these statues that eliminate the yard space. I personally think that's not desirable. This is a corner lot. I think it contributes to the neighborhood to leave more yard space and trees. This is the finished elevation of the front of the house. In my experience, working with the National Park Service, they would like the doors replacing the windows because there were 2 doors in the historic photo, and so those doors are honoring the history. If we had to give up those French doors on the front of the house, we certainly would. It doesn't really make sense to me because there were 2 doors and we're honoring that history, but that's, that was the inspiration for adding the French doors in the front. We're expanding the porch because we look forward to being part of the community and welcoming people to the house. It's more welcoming. If we had to give that up, we would too. What we can't give up is the modification of the roof. Without modifying that pyramid roof, you simply can't renovate this property. You can't add second-story space, and you can't justify the cost of renovation. We intend to keep the historic fireplaces that are there. So the chimneys that Joseph referenced are the chimneys for those 2 historic fireplaces, and then adding a 3rd. This is the adjacent house. The house next door is 3 stories. The facade on that house on the left is definitely not the roof that house started with. It has a very similar front porch. That house has been renovated and expanded. The picture on the right is the house across the street. That roof has been renovated and expanded. The language on the top of that slide references the guidelines, that the height of the foundation wall roof and main roof of a new building should be compatible by not contrasting greatly with the surrounding historic prop buildings. I think it's indisputable that our plan it fits the surrounding buildings. These are 5 properties between Belmont and 12 South on the same block. Every single house on this block has a modified roof structure with dormers added and have been redeveloped. To artificially restrict this house because of a focus on the pyramid roof seems to not be in concert with what the neighborhood wants. I've reached out to the neighbors. Everyone wants to see this house redeveloped. It's an eyesore, and it's falling apart. These are the adjacent commercial properties to give you some context. And then this is our addition. Those quotes are also from the guidelines. The guidelines literally dictate to have the addition be different through the use of modern materials. We followed that. They talk about new dormers being in scale to existing dormers on nearby historic buildings. We followed that. This is the historic house on the left. Those are 2 doors and 2 windows that do not match the current house. The front porch, though, is there. We plan to restore that front porch. and bring it back. So to suggest that the existing house has historic features, some of which we need to keep, like the pyramid roof, but others that we don't, is arbitrary. And I think the purpose of this panel is to eliminate arbitrary decisions and to be intellectually honest about redevelopment and conscientious. This is the existing house. You can see it's fallen apart. And then these, the adjacent house, I think is really important to emphasize. We're not even building anything close to the scale of that adjacent house. And then these are images if you'd like to go through them. So with that, I'll take a break and be available to respond to any comment.
Thank you. Okay, open public hearing. Close public hearing.
I'll start off. It's kind of hard to know where to start. This is a historic contributing home with its existing historic massing and form. I think that the applicant's design is a nice house. It could work as an infill somewhere in one of our historic districts potentially, but I'm totally in line with the staff recommendation, and this is not, we've routinely denied other similar proposals under the very same guidelines that this staff recommendation was written. So with that, I just don't have, I don't know. Anybody else have any comments? I'd be interested to hear, but I support the staff recommendation on this one.
I think the design is reflective of what's happened in this area. A lot of transition, a lot of change, but our guidelines in the Department of the Interior really talk about the importance of those historic homes maintaining the character, the form, the shape, the style. And one of our guiding things that we have for everything we do is not to change the front of the houses substantially. This changes the front of the house substantially. This is a character-defining home in this, and it's a unique home in this neighborhood, and one that has a rich history. Beautiful house can be restored within the guidelines in a perfect way. And I agree with Commissioner Price that this house would be wonderful as an infill in a different neighborhood, different area, but not to replace what's there with this. The new construction as shown has some suggestions of what was there before, but they're only suggestions. It's not what was there before. So I agree with you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Unless there are any other questions or comments, I'm happy to make a motion. With respect to 1207 Paris Avenue, I move for approval of the staff recommendation.
Okay, Commissioner Price has made a motion, a second by Commissioner Cashin. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes.
The next case is 2220 30th Avenue South. The application is to construct a rear addition and front addition to a contributing house. A separation reduction is needed between the proposed rear addition and the existing shed. The house at 2220 30th Avenue South is a circa 1938 minimal traditional style house that contributes to the historic character of the Hillsborough West End neighborhood conservation zoning overlay. A front addition was added to the historic house prior to the overlay. The original footprint without the front gable addition can be seen on the 1951 Sanborn map there at the bottom of the screen. The rear addition is located only 10 feet from an existing 160 square foot shed in the rear yard. Staff finds that the reduced separation can meet the design guidelines for the reasons outlined in the staff report. Staff finds that the proposed rear addition meets the setbacks, but staff finds that the proposed front addition does not meet the guidelines for setback and rhythm of spacing, because there is a historic house on the lot that has already created a historic front setback. Staff finds that the proposed front addition does not meet the historic setback of the specified lot nor of the historic context. Staff finds that the proposed rear addition meets the design guidelines. Staff finds that the proposed front addition does not meet the design guidelines for location, removability, and demolition. The design guidelines state that for contributing structures, an addition should be situated at the rear of the building in such a way that it will not disturb either the front or side facades. Because the house at 2220 30th Avenue South is a contributing house, staff finds that the proposed front addition does not meet the design guidelines for location. Staff recognizes that a front addition has already been added to the historic house. However, the existing front addition was constructed prior to the overlay and so was not reviewed by the MHZC. While the MHZC would not require the removal of an addition built prior to the overlay, staff finds that the existing addition could be removed in the future and the historic integrity of the original home would still be intact. Therefore, staff finds the home to be contributing despite the existing front addition. That being said, staff finds that the historic house should not be further altered with a second front addition, taking the house further out of compliance. So staff recommends approval of the rear addition with the standard conditions shown on the screen. I won't read through those, but they're all pretty standard conditions for an addition. And staff recommends, with those conditions, staff finds that the proposed rear addition meets the design guidelines. Staff recommends disapproval of the front addition, finding that it does not meet sections 2B1C and 2B2F for setbacks, 2B2A for location, or 2B2E for removability, and 3B2B for appropriate demolition. You also did receive some public comment for this one, and the applicant is here as well with a presentation.
Thank you, Joseph.
Okay, thank you. My name is Brian Beach. I'm the homeowner, and I'm here with my wife, Raina. Thanks for the opportunity to discuss our proposal. As a bit of background, when we first purchased this home in 2019, it had been a rental property for about 30 years, and it was severely neglected. In the years since, my wife and I have invested a lot in the property and the community, and we're quite proud of the results. We're here to talk about our addition because we need a home that better fits the needs of our family, and we want nothing more than to stay in this neighborhood. We need you to weigh in on two issues. The first is a separation reduction, which the staff supports, and so I defer to their justification. The second involves modifying an existing bay window, which is a non-contributing design feature since it was part of a carport conversion that occurred sometime between the 1950 Sanborn map and the 1968 archival photograph that appears in the staff report. The issue is that the bay window is on the front of the home. The staff has recommended that you deny the request, but their report omitted some important contextual information, namely that the bay window is structurally defective and not part of the original facade. Here's a photograph of the bay window, and as you can see, there's severe rot around the trim. We're told by our contractor that this is because of the low pitch of the roof on the bay window, which does not get water far enough away from the fascia boards. But it gets worse. Because of that low pitch, during heavy rains, water wicks back into the property, and it's causing interior damage. Here's a photo of that damage. There's also an adjacent light fixture that we can no longer use because of that water damage. At least we can't safely use it. And then here's a copy of a letter from our contractor. It's also at the end of those handouts that essentially his recommendation is that we rebuild. So in discussions with our contractor, we settled on a gable design, which is consistent with Historic's design guidelines, a point made in the staff report on page 11. It would be more historically appropriate than the existing bay window with a slant roof. We think the home's design would be further enhanced if we expanded the bay window into a dining room, as this would add symmetry with the existing front addition. The feedback that we received from our neighbors, contractors, architects has all been overwhelmingly positive. We hope you approve of the design, but we are also open to any feedback that would make this rebuild more historically appropriate. So let me now spend a little bit of time making the case for why any front addition is allowable under existing guidelines. We agree with the staff that the proposal is modest and that the current setback is deeper than the contributing context. This deep setback and low roof line limits our rear expansion options. We've watched quite a few of these online, and it seems like there has been some flexibility if a home is proposing a modest addition, if it has an existing modest footprint, and if it has a very deep lot placement. Now, the second argument would be that the home has not actually maintained its historic integrity, which we know is a necessary condition for being a contributing property. So here's a picture of the home in 1968. The staff report suggests that the front addition could be removed and the historic integrity would be revived. This seems like a stretch. The front addition added a gable to the original roof line. We know this because we can see the original rafters in the attic. It also required cutting a hole in the original foundation to add crawl space access. The original siding and windows have been removed, and an interior door was added. These modifications make it difficult, maybe even impossible, to determine what the original facade actually looked like. If the staff feels that those barriers could be overcome, such that the current front addition meets the removability condition, then it would be even easier for our proposed front addition to also satisfy that removability condition. We can preserve the roof rafters, and should someone want to remove the foundation that is currently there, or the foundation that we will be pouring, you could just as easily restore the carport that is shown in the Sanborn maps. Then they wouldn't actually have to infer any placement of original windows. The only question would be whether that original carport had a carriage door or not, a question that we often wonder about, but a question that's ultimately irrelevant because returning the bay window to a carport or attached garage would not be allowed under the existing guidelines. We think a historically appropriate design that complements the neighborhood is a better solution than the carport conversion and the current bay window, which is stylistically out of place. This slide actually shows even further modifications. You can see that the windows were modified, we think, sometime in the 70s or 80s, again, further changing the original facade, and so the issue of historic integrity. So the staff also calls our home minimal traditional, but our reading of the MHZC codebook seems to indicate that minimal traditional is actually not part of the guiding vision for this neighborhood. The design guidelines for additions and new construction explicitly appeal to three style choices: colonial revival, Tudor revival, and craftsman. And if you go on Wikipedia and you look for minimal traditional, you'll see that those finds are defined by being small, cheap, and a lack of architectural details. Those features stand in stark contrast to the MHZC design guidelines concerning windows, siding, doors, and trim. This is not just our own interpretation. In an email with the staff, a copy of which also appears at the end of your packet, we were told that our neighbor was allowed to do a front addition simply because their home was non-contributing. For those that are unfamiliar with our home, it lies at the fringe of the overlay. And this is an important piece of contextual information, as many of our neighboring homes are, or at one point were, non-contributing. This includes the 1950s duplex across the street from us, which is in the overlay. And if you go on Google Street View, you can roll back the clock and see a pattern of development where non-contributing homes have been rebuilt into something that is more compatible with the vision of the Hillsborough West End neighborhood. This slide shows three specific examples of neighboring homes with similar designs that have since been redeveloped. We're not going to pretend to know the nuances of each of these decisions. All that we're saying is that we're hoping to follow in the tradition of making this neighborhood more attractive for families that appreciate historic-looking homes. Here's a picture of two original non-contributing homes, their place on the Sanborn map, and what it looks like today. Our home is noted by the star. Here's a third original home that was part of that same development. And here is, here is 2806 West Linden, still on that same block, which has a similar design and lot placement. What we find interesting about this home is that the neighboring home still stands today. And this tells us that the deep lot placements for minimal traditional homes might have been driven by perceptions of their lower quality rather than contextual information such as curves in the street. Here are two more homes on the corner of Natchez Trace, and the one in highlighted is the one that we showed earlier. So let me just now talk a bit about the staff's concern about setbacks. We were surprised to see the staff report focus so much on this issue when in 2020, the staff approved, without seeking input from the neighbors or the zoning board, the construction of a porch at 2903 West Linden. That was the house that is shown in green in the earlier slides. The satellite pictures at the end of your handouts show that that porch in question extends 10 or so feet beyond the front of every one of the neighboring homes on that street. Our proposal, in contrast, does not change existing setbacks. First, note that our home has two front additions, not one. The bay window actually extends 3 feet from the original structure, while the bedroom addition extends about 14 feet. The bedroom addition still lies entirely behind our neighbor's home. Our proposal is to extend the bay window from 3 feet to about 10 feet to accommodate adding a dining room. By virtue of being shorter than the existing bedroom addition, our proposal does not alter the setback that has been established by that bedroom addition since at least 1968. In summary, the bay window is a non-contributing feature and it's in desperate need of a redesign. We've proposed an addition that follows historic's building guidelines. It corrects the asymmetry caused by an earlier addition, and it enhances the historic appeal of the home without altering setbacks or establishing any new precedents. It is allowable if we recognize that either A, the home has been so modified that it does not retain its historic integrity, or B, that the original structure was never a major contributor to historic's vision for the Hillsborough West End neighborhood, or C, that the proposal does not touch any of the remaining character, namely that front fireplace. And if anything, we think our proposal enhances the fireplace by drawing your eye towards that, as well as the nice landscaping that we've been putting in. Our proposal, well, missed a slide. Our proposal is informed by our own familiarity with the neighborhood and our own appreciation of historic architecture. I hope that I've been clear that we have the same goals here. We want to make this home more compatible with the historic vision of the Hillsborough West End neighborhood. This is ultimately our home, and so the design is as important, maybe even more important to us than it is to our neighbors. So we're actually quite receptive to any feedback that you would have that would further improve the character of our home. Thanks for listening. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Not at the moment.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Open public hearing. Close public hearing. Okay, discussion.
For Joseph. Could you clarify the issue brought up by the applicant of whether or not this is a contributing home based on its minimal traditional style?
Staff finds it contributing. We've had it down as contributing. We do recognize the front addition that's been added. And
what about the assertion that minimal traditional does not contribute to the overall neighborhood? It was not listed in the guidelines as a contributing type.
we have identified several in the neighborhood that are minimal traditional and still consider them contributing. I might defer to Robin for any further.
I think that determining style is an imperfect science. And that even if it's non-contributing, there's an issue with front setback. And the bay window could certainly be replaced. That's not a concern.
Right, yeah. You know, in front of on this commission, front additions have always been a pretty bright line that we don't go over. I don't remember ever doing it for a contributing home in any of our local districts. I also recognize this is a very deep front setback and there's very little rear yard to go into. But given that bright line that we've always, in my experience, upheld, I just don't see, I'd be afraid that if we approve a front addition now, that it would just open more neighbors and applicants to coming forward asking for front additions, and we wouldn't have any. It would be, if we were to deny them, it could be seen as an arbitrary decision on our part in this case, or in that future case. So it's a tough situation for us to be in. I don't like being in it. Those are my thoughts right now. I appreciate hearing others.
Yeah, like you, Commissioner Price, I'm compelled by often we see cases where lot placement influences what an applicant can do, and there are other applicants or other homes in a district that don't suffer the same, the same constraints, if you will. And so certainly that opens a door, but I think in looking at an addition that was done prior to the guidelines going into place that pushes the house, in my mind, away from compliance, just in terms of its, you look at the original photographs of minimal traditional and then the addition that was put on it, and then you add another enclosed addition to that, it renders the house much less contributing, I think. And so there was, and I appreciate the applicant's detailed information and arguments, one of which is for front addition that was an open porch, and in this case, we're bringing a house further away from not moving towards compliance, and that's a stumbling block. It's a hurdle I just can't get over. I don't know if I've articulated that terribly well, Commissioner Price, but I'm sort of piling on, I guess, to some of your comments.
I do have to say, I appreciate the applicant's homework and all the time you spent, obviously, watching our deliberations. You know how difficult a lot of these decisions are. We appreciate the diligence and the thought process that you've gone through with this. I do think that the front additions are extremely difficult and do go against virtually everything we've done. They are, and this would change the front character of that house. There are additions. There is the ability here to do the addition on the back, which is appropriate. So I have to agree with other commissioners. So if there's no other comment, I'll make a motion. With respect to 2220 30th Avenue South, I move for approval of the rear addition with staff conditions, but not of the front addition.
Motion by Vice Chair Stewart.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Price. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Again, thank you, applicant.
Next up is 1116 Kirkland Avenue. It's a circa 1935 framed bungalow that contributes to the historic character of the Englewood Place neighborhood conservation zoning overlay. Until recently, the house's historic siding was covered with vinyl siding. The owner recently removed the vinyl siding, revealing the historic siding. The owner would like to install sheathing board and new fiber lap siding over the historic siding on the front and side facades. Staff examined the siding and observed the siding to be old-growth wood with a 4-inch reveal. Staff finds that the siding on these 3 facades are in good enough condition to be retained and restored. Here are some photos of the front facade. This is the left facade. Staff observed that there were some minimal cracking and nail hole damage, but did not observe any significant moisture damage. Although some boards need to be replaced, staff overall finds that the siding is in repairable condition. So again, here, this is the left facade. And here is the right facade. Staff recommends retention and repair of the siding on the front and side facades because the historic siding is a significant architectural feature of the house and also contributes to the house's structural integrity. Since MHDC does not review the replacement of windows or the re-roofing within the Englewood Place conservation overlay, the siding is a primary material that Commission can deem to be retained in order to retain some historic fabric on the house. In addition, staff finds that it is not appropriate to cover up the historic siding because it will create issues with the window and door casings not being flush or proud of the siding. These casings will need to be furred out so the overall dimensions of the historic building will be altered, resulting in a project that is not compatible with the historic building. Moreover, staff finds that covering up the historic siding with sheathing board and new siding will further damage the historic siding, making it more difficult for someone in the future to restore the historic siding. Covering up the historic siding in this manner is not reversible. So staff is recommending disapproval of the project. I just want to make two clarifications. I think there was a typo in the staff recommendation, which I realized earlier today, where we said we were just recommending retention of the one side facade. We're recommending retention of the front facade and the two side facades. In the past, sometimes the staff and commission have come up with solutions where if there are some damage to some side facades that, the front facade and maybe one of the side facades remain in the boards, the other facade be kind of used on the other facades to make the repairs. That's mentioned in the staff report. We didn't discuss it extensively only because the applicant's not asking to remove all the siding. Their ask is to cover up the siding. So, but that is an option if you wanted to discuss that option. So, I wanted to make that clear. Thank you. And the applicant is here.
Melissa, I have a clarifying question.
Sure.
You mentioned, and I know it's familiar with it, window replacement is not something that the staff would review.
Yes.
If the openings change, that changes the game, correct?
Yes.
Just want that to be part of the public record here, because we've seen a lot of,
yes,
at least 3 scenarios earlier today, and the applicant is here and hopefully listening, that it's not free reign to have an oops. If that is the case, the relationship of the siding to the trim and all of those things is, as has been mentioned here by the staff, is critical and important. Thank you.
Yep. Alteration of window and door openings, the sizes, adding them, removing them is considered partial demolition. In that case, we do review it.
Good clarification. Thank you, Melissa. Applicant? The applicant must speak first.
These are at the end, okay. Okay, let's see where to start, I guess. Okay, my name is Kevin Peden. I am the husband of Christine Rogers. We own this house. My wife, Christine, and I bought our house in August 2018 when we were both 36 years old. We were newly engaged and excited to make the big decision of home ownership. Our 1,000 square foot, 2-bed, 1-bath cottage house right off Gallatin Road in Englewood, just by the underpass, was all that we could realistically afford, as she is an educator and I am a massage therapist. Christine is a 3rd-generation Nashvilleian, and I have lived in Nashville for 17 years. We work every day in service of others, recognizing that our paths are purpose-driven but not financially lucrative. We are invested in the city of Nashville. Our dreams were not uncommon when closing on our house. We would get married, turn our house into a home, and hope to grow our family with a baby. Sadly, after many years of trying due to health issues and a heartbreaking miscarriage, our dream of having a child has been put on hold. It has been a gut-wrenching experience for us both. A little over a year ago, with the real possibility of never having a child on the horizon, we started seeing our home as even more of a forever home that we could see ourselves growing old in together. I say all this to convey that we have a great emotional stake in the feeling and the sense of meaning that our home gives us. The trellis we were married under is now in our front yard. We have loved our house and have strived to be good stewards of our investment in our home. In that spirit, we had hopeful energy toward improvements we could make to our property. A few small changes were made, but the biggest project was to replace the unappealing old weather-torn vinyl siding that had been on the house since we bought it. We discussed the options with our contractor, who is here with me today, and decided to order Allura smooth concrete fiber siding and materials to start the construction process. This is an approved material in the Historical Design Guidelines PDF that was given to us after the fact. Our plan was to remove the vinyl siding, install zip system wall sheathing over the original wood siding, and then place the smooth Allura concrete fiber siding with 4-inch reveal over the sheathing. Notably, smooth 4-inch reveals are the standard aesthetic laid out within the Historical Commission guidelines. The original wood siding would be encased in this system and protected from further damage from the elements. We have no desire to discard or tear down the original siding. This would literally protect it for 30+ years to come. Not mentioned in the report is that the original wood siding still has toxic lead-based paint covering it, and we were assured by our contractor that this process was the best way to encapsulate the toxic nature of the material while maintaining structural and aesthetic integrity. The entire time we've lived in this neighborhood, we'd never heard or known that our property was on a historical conservation area. To be honest, you wouldn't be able to tell from walking down the block. Our block is immediately off a busy section of Gallatin Road. There are multiple examples of modern design. I've included some that are multiple examples of modern design on our street, for some of which photo evidence has provided. A new Wingstop restaurant was recently built last year 90 yards away from our house, across the street from a muffler mechanic. Many houses within sight of ours have renovated their siding and or exterior since we've moved in 2018. A number of them fall outside of the guidelines provided by the Historic Zoning Commission, including the house right next door, which had an 8-inch reveal faux textured concrete fiber board installed. We felt our tasteful design would be a welcome addition to the neighborhood. Our contractor said he would handle applying for the permits. The first that we heard of needing a historic zoning permit was after our contractor and his crew had already removed the vinyl siding from our house. He let us know that a representative for the commission had told him that the vinyl would need to be removed and the wood underneath evaluated before a permit could be granted, which he then did under order of the committee. When Melissa came to evaluate our home, we felt confident that a permit would be granted due to the crumbling, damaged, toxic condition of the wood. There are numerous cracks, holes, and examples of deterioration. I went through and counted over 900 nails sticking out of the wood, which will need to be removed, creating more possibility for damage. It is not lost on us that every time we walk into our home past the flaking toxic lead paint, our health is at risk. Our home was built in 1935 during the Great Depression. The framing around the house of the siding had severe termite damage that our contractor has cleared and improved, thankfully. Since 1935, our house has seen many changes, many among them central heating and air, as well as increasingly extreme temperatures brought on by global warming and severe storms as part of climate change. Our improvements would bring our house into current times by allowing us to conserve energy with an energy-efficient home. In order to properly remove the lead paint from the wood and maintain quality of the material, the lowest cost estimate we have received is $61,000, which is approaching 23% of the total cost of our home. In one document we read from HUD on lead abatement, it stated that lead paint does not have to be abated when cost prohibitive. We simply do not have that kind of money to spend. It is financially impossible for us to pay this amount, and had we known that would be forced upon us, we never would have touched the vinyl siding, despite its unsightly, textured, historically inaccurate appearance. At this stage, we have no choice but to leave the house in the shape that it is currently in, which is decidedly unattractive to us and certainly to the other members of our neighborhood. This will likely allow the original wood siding to continue to deteriorate and rot at an expedited rate. Our home and our investment would suffer in the long run. Even if we had the money to restore the rotting, damaged wood and abate the lead paint and repaint it, the lifetime maintenance cost of living in a home that would need to be repainted every 3 to 5 years is punishing for people in our financial bracket. The current decision we are being asked to uphold isn't realistically achievable for us. Frankly, we were stunned when we got the email saying we had to restore the original wood. We felt like another hope for the future we had envisioned was being taken from us. And because my wife and I were not made aware of any of this until it was too late, we are now entrapped in this situation. There are many ways to preserve history. No one in this room would agree that leaving our old vinyl siding with its fake wood texture and damaged surface is preferable to what we are proposing to do. The way our house looks now is also in no way preferable. The 4-inch reveal smooth allura siding will have the same appearance as the original siding, but it will be energy efficient and will be able to maintain. Here's some pictures of the various damage on the wood. That's in worse shape than it appears from further away. And here, yeah, in that corner has a big hole. And then we have on the back, okay, sorry. We have provided some actual photo examples of what we intend to do because we have already done the work to this prior addition to the back, which was permitted. We intend on painting the house with historical colors. As you can see, it looks identical to the original material, but with a more refined look and superior protection. We implore you to consider our elegant solution to a health concern, an eyesore concern, and a cost-prohibitive problem that is within our means, while utilizing the technology available to us to preserve our investment in the future of both our lives and to the neighborhood as a whole. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Appreciate your time as well. Okay. Yep. Yeah, you do.
We can leave.
If you
That's
give us,
okay. We can-
give us your
you
name,
can leave
please.
this. I'm sorry. I'm Greg Dvorak. I'm the contractor for the project, trying to help the Rogers out.
Sure.
Kevin, if you, yeah, the current condition, yeah. I mean, if you look at this photo on the right, that's the look that they're trying to achieve, which is in line with the historical look of the house. You can see the photo on the left is a side-by-side. That's a corner of the house. The biggest concern here is the presence of lead-based paint. The lead-based paint is on very thick and heavy and has to be removed. And if I could ask for a pause on the time, because I do have a slide in the deck in here. I just don't know where we're at in the deck. That slide, that one right there. So when we took a look and got the recommendation from the commission about the fact that we had to restore the wood siding so we could clean it up and paint it and caulk it so it would protect the envelope of the house for years to come, we reached out to 8 different contractors that were licensed in lead paint removal and restoration, and all those red NBs were no bids because they didn't want anything to do with it. It's too big, it's too hard. And full abatement of the paint, meaning strip the house and start over, was $61,000, like Kevin mentioned. To demo the siding, pull it off, is $10,000. And to scrape it, per the EPA guidelines, is $17,000. Now, these are prices just to get the wood ready to be repaired and painted. So you can see there's significant cost in having to do this. Also, in the photographs that you were shown of the existing house and the siding, the windows are wrapped with aluminum trim. The aluminum trim looks nice, but it's covering the old wood trim. We've seen some of the existing wood trim because the windows have been replaced by the previous owners. It's in bad shape, so it's going to be rotted and damaged by the time we get to it. So we do have to restore some of the wood around some of the windows just to get it to a clean state. So our plea is that it is very cost prohibitive to try to bring this material to a condition where we can clean it up and paint it and make it viable for the Rogers so that every 5 years they only have to paint it again and caulk it again. So that's our main plea, is to do it for the city is very cost prohibitive.
Thank you. I'm going to open public hearing. Council member, you know this. Council member will have,
Can I ask
we
a
have,
question of the
yes,
applicant?
Vice Chair.
So of the contractor, Mr. DeVoe, so can you go to the microphone and tell us, what is your proposed treatment of, where you said that you've got the aluminum on top of the existing trim? If you add sheathing on top of the existing paneling, and then how are you planning on?
Yeah, the sheathing is just 7/16 of an inch thick. And we would have to, like Melissa accurately pointed out, we have to build out the trim a little bit so it is pronounced and it is proud of the siding, so that when we're done with it, it looks like the old detail that was originally there. That's our intention. We knew we had to do that.
It's okay. I'm sure we'll ask some further questions. Okay, open public hearing.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners, and again, thank you for your service. I do have a couple questions for staff. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask during my time. First of all, our staff does a phenomenal job. There's no doubt, and I know you know this. I appreciate that Melissa met the appellant on site with me so that we could take a look at this and I could understand what exactly was going on with this property. I'm curious to know how many parcels are in the Englewood Place Neighborhood Conservation Overlay. I'm not sure what the answer to that is, or if the staff is able to answer that.
We don't have that information right off the top of our heads.
I'm gonna bet that it's over 1,000 parcels. The property that we heard earlier on Englewood Place is 1.1 miles from this, and that is within the same overlay. This street, I don't know if Parcel Viewer is able to be pulled up, but when you look at the overlay, it is huge. And this street is, this particular property is 300 feet in from Gallatin Pike, one of the largest arterials in the city. But Kirkland Avenue has 27 homes. Out of all of Kirkland Avenue, one little section is a part of this overlay. So I would say that if necessary, I will file legislation to remove that from the overlay. If there's when I was there on site, the appellant mentioned this, most of this street has already been renovated and there are not many contributing homes to this. So if that's what we need to do, then that's what I will do. Not necessarily for this one appellant, but to look at the street, those 27 homes themselves, I don't believe that they are as contributing to the overlay as other homes are of those probably 1,000 homes that are parcels that are a part of it, that are contributing, that should be a part of the overlay. So I'm supportive of their case. I do think that they looked at the different types of siding and they're willing to do 4 inches, which is not the standard, 7 inches, I believe, is standard for hardy board. They're willing to do the 4 inches for that, which will look similar to, or will look, as you saw on the pictures, in my opinion, pretty historical and in line with the goals of the overlay. Now, I think one thing that I've watched, and being here, I got here on time today, took WeGo. I would encourage everybody to use public transit as we work on our transit referendum this fall. I ended up getting here earlier, and I just would challenge, when I've interviewed you for your appointments, I've asked folks, what approach will you take to historic zoning? And I've been very pleased, and I'm really thrilled that you are the folks that we have on this commission. One thing that I've noticed today is that our very capable staff has made recommendations and that you've agreed with every single recommendation that they've made. And I'm not necessarily used to seeing that from commissions. I typically will see some, and you've asked some back and forth questions, which is great, but I would encourage you to not be afraid of setting precedent, not be afraid of saying, this is what we believe the right thing is, even though we could get sued. Legal is here to advise, much like our staff attorney at council is there to advise. I don't suggest that you purposely say, let's rule this way, we know we'll get sued. I would say, or we know we're setting precedent for the neighborhood. I would recommend as a commission that you look at the whole context, not to say you're not doing that today, and make a decision based on the hardship that's put in front of you, and not necessarily just accept what staff has recommended. And again, I'm not suggesting that's exactly what you're doing. It's just that's what I've seen today. Our staff is very capable. I don't mean to take away from them at all. But I just would ask as a commission that you look at that and see if there's ways that you can be even more artful in determining what can be accepted, how motions can be changed so that it's not necessarily just what could appear to the public as rubber stamping what a department has done. If we're just doing what a department recommends, then we don't need commissions. And so I appreciate all of the work that you do. I'm not suggesting that that's what you're doing, but I can say that from the public's perspective, I have heard that before, and I know that you bring a tremendous amount of time and energy to this job, and you're not paid for it. You're volunteers. So I appreciate what you do. I just want to, I felt the need to say that because I've heard that from folks. Having said that, I do think that this is a case that I would ask that you agree with the appellant and that the solution that they found is approved and to your satisfaction. If not, then I just want to make sure people understand I will be filing legislation to remove this part of Kirkland Avenue from the entire overlay. Thanks so much.
Just respectfully, a little comment to
to the council member. These guidelines also, we start from the Secretary of the Interiors. I think you might be, that. But also the neighborhood comes to, and they create their guidelines as well. So we support the neighborhood. And so if you are going to do that with legislation, you will need voting, as you know. But our purview is to go with what the neighborhood association and how they came to that, and they've done that through their own processes for many years. So this might have been an exceptional meeting where we may not have bantered or debated some of these things, but we do. We don't always rubber stamp. That's not. I want to defend a little bit.
I think it's important for the public to hear that. So
Right.
I appreciate, and I want to listen now.
Sure. No. And I think that it's good for the public to hear that just because there's a recommendation, we do deliberate and we say that if it's fair, and there's not always a 100%, approval. There could be one or two because so this might have been an exceptional meeting. But to have, when you say rubber stamp, we want to not have that kind of perception to the public.
Agreed. And that's what I wanted, and I'm so glad you said that, because when I hear that from the public, I want to make sure that they understand that perception is not what you're here to do. I don't believe that's what you do, but when that perception is out there, I think it needs to be addressed, and you just did that, and I really appreciate that, Commissioner.
We thank you as well. Any other public hearing public hearing? If not, we will close public hearing. Again, thank you for that. And discussions with commissioners.
I understand and appreciate the applicant's case. And I also understand how contractors and suppliers want to provide new materials and install them. This house is like thousands of other historic homes in our overlays in Nashville. And yes, it has lead paint. I can speak from personal experience owning a circa 1900 home that also had vinyl siding on it. The tornado actually did me a favor in 2020 because it damaged the vinyl to the point where I had always wanted to take it off and reveal the original siding and window casings, which were covered up with aluminum, just like here. And when we did take the vinyl off, I was looking at the exact same scene that you are now. We found that repairing and repainting did not require full EPA abatement of lead paint. It's not a requirement of our design guidelines that level of abatement, stripping, and all of that's not required by our design guidelines. And it's substantially, the cost is substantially less than installing backer board and new cement fiber siding. And honestly, I think it looks good. It's historic material. It looks like a historic home. And I say all this just to say that I feel like there's some false choices here, that it's either full lead-based abatement or covering with new siding. And there's middle ground there to explore. And I can say that from personal experience. I know we have in the past allowed changes to siding and full replacement of siding, but when it was with wood, historic material, or in-kind replacement with the kind of materials, siding materials that would have been found historically. I don't remember a request of this type that we've approved when it came to replacement of siding. And I would like to echo Chairman Bell's comment that we don't rubber stamp decisions. I find it surprising that it's even been brought up like that. And The Englewood Place neighborhood came to this body and asked for these rules. Nobody on this body or on the staff created these rules. We have been tasked to enforce them and uphold them. So I'm fully aware that there's public misconceptions in the public about how this works, but I would like to clarify that this neighborhood conservation overlay and its boundaries were set through a democratic process that involved neighborhood association and council, and the idea that that MHZC is imposing it on the neighborhood is totally incorrect. And to have a reactionary kind of response to a situation like this, and well, we're just going to pull the whole street out, I feel like is a drastic and not an ideal way to deal with this kind of situation. So anyway, I like old siding, I like old houses, I like original materials. I think that the homeowners will save money in the long run by restoring what's there. And for that reason, I support the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Price, I'm in the position to pile on further here on the specifics of this case. Some of the numbers that or estimates that were presented, I think I don't question their origin, but one of the things that was missing was the cost to paint and abate entirely doesn't compare to the cost and the labor to install the siding and create new. And we can have arguments about what's better or what's preferable. I think that would be a full analysis of this, and I certainly agree that lead-based paint abatement is not at all times necessary in a situation like this, especially on the exterior of the house. It does flake. It is has been proven hazardous, but it certainly is not a requirement that by this body that it be removed. So I'll echo that. And I'll also echo that I've been on this body for more than 18 years and don't ever come in here with the desire. I don't come with a preconceived notion that the staff's always right. And I have sometimes to the staff and to administrators' chagrin disagreed with their recommendations. And I would say quite frequently that happens. I guess it depends on your definition of frequent, but certainly it happens with some frequency that we don't entirely rubber stamp and or not question what the staff has put before us and or side with the applicant when they present a convincing case. And so that's all I'll say about that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You know, part of the reason that we invited to be part of this commission, several of us are architects and have had personal experience with projects such as this, and bring that expertise and to accompany what the staff's expertise is. The one number that I think jumped out at me was the number that the contractor showed to actually just scrape down the siding, which was, I think, 15,000 or so, plus or maybe 17,000, but which would be a lot less than the cost of the sheathing and the new materials. I know that the manufacturers say that this material is going to last, without having to touch it for 30 years. I have only had one project, which was a personal project, where the specified material with the factory finish was done. Every other project that the contractor has done, they've ordered the primed material and then painted it. So then, in addition to the cost of the material, you have the cost of painting on top of that, and that has to be repainted. Fortunately, with today's modern paints, it's not every 3 to 5 years. It's more, 10 to 15 years. But to Commissioner Price's experience and mine, what I found is that some of the owners want it to look brand new. And to me, for a historic home, it's that character that defines it. As you go up and down the neighborhood, you look through, new windows are wonderful, but man, they sure don't have the same historic charm as the old wavy glass windows and the individual panes. Same thing with siding. One of the things, I've had a number of clients that have been very happy when I've advised them to simply scrape off the loose paint, with best practices, and to then to apply new paint and to repair that siding. Fortunately, all the materials that we're talking about here are readily available, easy to procure and to use. So I question whether it's actually cheaper to do what's proposed versus restoring this existing siding. So, based on that, I tend to agree with staff recommendations. And the heart pine stuff, that stuff, that really does hold up. When you've got something that's been there since the 1930s, in as good a state as it is, then with some care and in the future, good maintenance, then it can last for a very, very long time. So with respect to 1116 Kirkland Avenue, I move for disapproval per the staff recommendations. And thank the staff for their good work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Vice Chair, for that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Commissioner Mayhall. All in favor? Do I hear and see any opposed? None? That motion passes. Thank you.
All right, the next case on the agenda is 237 Lauderdale Road. So this is a request to construct infill on what is currently a vacant lot. The previous house did not contribute to the historic character of the Cherokee Park Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay, and its demolition was permitted in 2023. So the historic context, which are the photos we see here, on similar lots is primarily 1.5 stories. So here are a couple of examples nearby and a couple more. The proposed infill is oriented to Lauderdale Road and meets all base zoning setbacks with a front setback that is appropriate for the historic context. Just to note, the site plan does show a future DADU, but plans for the outbuilding were not submitted with this application. So that would be something that would come in later if proposed. The proposed infill is 1.5 stories with a height and width that is appropriate for the historic context. The front facade of the infill is approximately 78% brick, exclusive of openings, roofing, and trim. Even though the percentage of brick is slightly below the 80% required by the Cherokee Park chapter of Part 2 of the design guidelines, staff finds that the material composition can be appropriate in this case, as the brick does read as the primary material for the infill. So here is the right side elevation and the left side elevation and the rear. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval of the infill with the conditions set forth in the staff recommendation, finding that the project can meet sections 4 and 5 of Part 1 and the Cherokee Park District's chapter of Part 2 of the design guidelines. So the applicant is
Thank you,
here.
Melissa.
Good afternoon, Michael Ward, Allard Ward Architects, 1618 16th Avenue South. Thank you, Melissa. Brian Horn, my partner, has led this design, and we're excited. We have a really wonderful family moving here from Portland who are building this house, and they're excited to make Nashville their retirement home. But anyway, it's been interesting for the massing and the materials, and especially with working in this neighborhood, the percentage of masonry and all has been interesting. So we're excited to see it finished. Thank you, Melissa.
Mr. Ward?
Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, are you good with all the recommendations?
Absolutely.
Okay. That makes it a lot smoother for us.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Open public hearing. Close public hearing.
Madam Chairman, with respect to 237 Lauderdale Road, I move for approval with staff conditions.
Motion by Vice Chair Stewart. Second by Commissioner Price. All in favor? Any opposed? Gotcha. All right, want to make sure you're paying attention there. It's getting late, yes. All in favor of the motion, I think we've done that, and that motion passes. Great.
There's been a request for a brief.
There is a request to take a break. It's 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, that motion did pass, legal.
The prior one, that was 5-0, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
in about 10 seconds. And I believe we are on number 22, 1014 Bate Avenue, is that correct? Okay, thank you. Legal, Ms. Ann, we also have one less.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
We only have one less commissioner.
You do, so you still have 5 total, so
We
you still
do.
have quorum, and you need 4 for a vote.
4
So
concurring
if it's
votes.
unanimous among those, you don't need to vote, but if it's not, then you may need to vote.
Duly noted.
Okay. Next is an application for infill in an outbuilding at 1014 Bate Avenue in Waverly, Belmont. Staff has issued an administrative permit for the demolition of the non-contributing house. This block includes a mix of non-contributing homes that predate the overlay and smaller historic houses. The historic context in this block includes modest 1 and 1.5 story houses. The applicant is proposing a 1.5 story house with a ridge height of about 24 feet and 10-foot 6-inch eaves, which staff finds appropriate for the historic context. The proposed width of the house at the front is 37 feet of solid massing, which is wider than other houses on similarly sized lots in the historic context. Staff finds that the maximum appropriate width at the front would be about 33 feet. A modest 1-story side bay could be appropriate, pushed back. Some historic houses in the context have open wraparound porches that add a few feet of width. This could be appropriate here as well if a hipped or pyramidal roof form was used, but staff finds that the proposed design with a solid 37 feet of width does not meet the context. The final material should be reviewed and approved prior to purchase and installation, and the porch beam should be at least 18 inches. The dormer in the front elevation is inset only 1 foot. Staff recommends that it be inset a full 2 feet. The side elevations include long dormer-like connectors between the 2 side gables. These types of connectors have been approved on infill in the past when appropriately inset. When the span of the connector is fairly modest, the Commission has approved an inset of 2 feet, as would be required for a fully detached dormer. However, when the span is longer, and here it's approximately 27 feet, the Commission has required a more significant inset to prevent the overall massing from becoming more of a 2-story form. Staff recommends that the side connectors here be inset a full 4 feet on either side. With the addition of a walkway from the front porch to the street, the proposed site plan meets the design guidelines. An outbuilding is proposed, which meets the design guidelines, except that vinyl siding is indicated. The final materials should be reviewed and approved prior to purchase and installation. Staff recommends the approval of the proposed infill with the conditions seen on the screen. I know the applicant is here and would like to speak. I'm also available for questions.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thanks. Good afternoon, Commission. My name is Jared Wilson. I'm the homeowner here, architect Lee. Hi, Jenny. Nice to meet you. And we'd like to ask for the 2 minutes of rebuttal if necessary at the end.
So let me just be really clear. Your 2 minutes rebuttal is if there is public comment.
Okay, got it.
So you will be able to use your full 10 minutes and we'll give you 5 seconds that I just talked to you.
Gotcha. All right, thanks. So I just did a little slideshow. We feel the width, mass of the house is in context with the other homes this is all on Bate Avenue in the block. The first one is 1017 Bate Avenue, which is 41 feet wide. You can see by the plan. Sorry, I don't know if that's a little hard to read up there. And the next is 1019 Bate Avenue. That is 40 feet wide. Again, the plan there. And the third one, we have on here is 1104 Bate Avenue, and that is 41 feet wide. And that's about it for my, over to you.
Also important to note that the.
Please give us your name.
Oh, sorry, Lee Ross Dinwiddie.
Say that slowly.
Lee Ross Dinwiddie.
Thank you.
Sorry. As he said, we're the design team. 1017 Bate is the 42 feet wide plus wraparound porch. So when we initially designed the house, we were at the maximum width plus wraparound porch, and then we were asked to maybe take that off so to make our roof lines work. The base of the house got wider, but the porch came off, and we've been back and forth a bit trying to be minimally wide for the interior to lay out, but we're still within, I think it's 6 more feet of the base zone from the setback. So we feel like the lot is wide enough to allow for a slightly wider house, but still not be the widest house in the street by far. So, if we were on all setbacks and breaking the rules, I'd be the first to say, yeah, this doesn't fit. But we're going to have a substantial side yard and still be smaller than a lot of the context on the street. As far as the dormer insets from the upstairs, the connecting roof lines is just a result of the need for headroom and trying to stay long and narrow and short as well. And we meet all those height restrictions. So we're not asking to extend any of those rules. We just need to be able to hide behind that lower roof line, if you will, in the front. And it's one of the only ways to do so. I believe this zone predates I think this district predates a lot of the updated rules, so we don't have all the ridge raises and the roof options like we do in some of the other districts. So we're a little bit limited on maybe rules that are not caught all the way up. So we're challenged to hide behind that smaller, shorter facade. Is that accurate? I think this is older. This one's not been updated like the others.
What's your understanding of that? Like it's on the
revision date, the last revision date of the
You mean-
guidelines for this district.
Yeah.
I believe they're older than the others.
Waverly Belmont? I don't.
I'm sorry, I might have missed the question. I'm sorry.
I believe this district is a little more restrictive than some of the other districts because it hasn't been updated as recently as some of the others on heights and setbacks.
This is part of the consolidated, so it would be the same as the majority of our districts, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
When you meant updated, it's the consolidated guidelines. Okay.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Just
Sorry.
want to be clear.
Right.
Yep. So out of the recommendations, which one are you requesting leniency on?
We didn't realize we had vinyl siding, so I think we're okay with that, right? Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's walkway no problem, porch beam no problem.
I believe 2 and 3, correct?
Yes, I'm just making sure. 2 and 3 is okay, I believe. 2 and 4.
Oh, sorry, yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
2 and 4.
Yes, ma'am. Both are related to the width of the house.
Okay. All right. Okay. You still have 6 minutes, and unless there is public rebuttal, you can talk more.
I have a question.
Yes.
That won't count necessarily against your time, just clarifying question. So in the elevations, this is sort of deeper in the weeds on the architecture. The drawings indicate the side gables have a trim it's just a function of drawing. Will that result, typically, historically, you would see that resolve itself like at the roof line, and it wouldn't like picture frame the whole elevation. I mean, in terms of constructability, do you see that all? I guess my point is, it's really hard for those things in the field to match up, and I think it looks better I mean, that's not referencing a guideline. I just want to get some clarity in how the drawings are done and what the intent is once it's constructed.
Absolutely.
So when we inspect it, we know that it meets whatever it is. And was that at all clear in terms of?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Just to clarify, are you saying that the rake would ideally not be coplanar to the fascia?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ideally, yes.
Okay.
Our goal was to make this set-in more compliant. We extended that fascia down to give the illusion that there's more roof there, so the dormer sits back further.
Got it. Which I'm fine with. I guess the rake, just a few inches.
Yeah, if the rake pushed back, that'd be great. But we were.
But that can't happen.
Does
what it
that
sounds
affect
like.
the front? Oh no, we can do that. Yeah.
Okay. Just as an overhang,
I was making
I don't
sure
think it's going to work out that way. I guess is kind of what I'm saying.
We could easily the rakes could push back in slightly,
Right.
as long as it doesn't make us non-compliant with our front or rear dormers. That's what I'm hesitant to. Can you
Yeah,
flip to the
I
rear
understand.
dormer, the rear
And
elevation?
I don't. This isn't written in a guideline. I'm just
Right. No,
constructibility and some of those other things. That's typically in my mind what I think I see when I'm riding around and seeing houses and such. Anyways, thank you for clarifying.
Okay. We'll get into some discussion. So you're good? You're good? Okay, all right. We know that 2 and 4 is what you're questioning, and we will open public hearing. And we will close public hearing, so there's no public comments, so you don't have the 2 minutes to rebuttal. Okay? Understood? Yeah, just want to make that clear. It's our protocols, just want to make sure. Okay, thank you. So I do have a question, Jenny. So go over with us again the 33-foot and why that's a recommendation.
So we look at the width of the historic houses on comparably sized lots. So they did point out some houses that are wider. Those houses are all in wider lots. The one that is the widest, that lot is not super bigger. It is, I believe that one, like I got all the different numbers in different places. I think that house is on a 53-foot wide lot. So that one's not a lot bigger. One of the others is a 57-foot wide lot. The other was a 75-foot wide lot. This is 50. So we don't really consider that apples and apples comparing a house on a 50-foot wide lot with a house on a 75-foot wide lot, if that makes sense. So that's kind of where we came up with those numbers. So they're not wrong. There are houses on that block that are historic houses that are a bit wider than this one. But given the size of this lot,
because those lots were wider.
Correct.
To begin with. Okay, clear.
Yeah, I think I understand Jenny's analysis. That was a question I was just going to ask too. I think with on both 2 and 4, I agree with Jenny's analysis, and that if this application was brought into compliance with those, the ability to build a good house with plenty of room for a family to live in is still possible. So, given the staff recommendation and the follow-up questions we've just had, I would say that I'm in favor of approving the staff recommendation as is with the conditions.
Thank you, Commissioner.
David, I'm going to put my rubber stamp away. And ask a question, or just have some more discussion about how we've interpreted rhythm and spacing along the street, and that the applicants presented a historic home that I don't know what the specific, I can recall from the presentation, I think it's a 47-foot wide house, including, a bump out that's a little further back, but there's a wraparound porch and it doesn't count the porch, and it looks like that house, I'm going from the picture, is pretty close to the house that's next to it. And so when I look at this, the front facade, 1.5 story, the applicant, is fit within what appear, it's reasonable. It's not piling too much in there. That's one that I don't necessarily, that hard 33 feet and cutting 4 feet out of this house, I don't know how that would affect the front proportion of the house, but it might start to look a little narrower and taller than more squat. And so I'm not as bothered by the additional 4 feet in width. And to the applicant's presentation and argument is that they're not sort of flush out and maxed out to the NBSL, the setback lines. That's my read on this one in particular. So. And the 4 feet on the sides, I think I understand what the staff is asking for there, and again on the side elevations and the lot coverage for this house, as presented, it seems reasonable to me and not contrasting greatly for what it's worth.
I appreciate those comments, and I think I understand where you're coming from.
Doesn't mean I'm right. I'm just, in the interest of rubber stamps.
Would it be reasonable to ask, Jenny, adjacent, how is the context to historic structures adjacent or across or near the area? Does that make sense? Like rhythm and spacing is what I'm hearing as well.
Right.
So,
right. So, and I guess that's where we felt that 33 is what would be appropriate. We thought,
compared to
the historic houses in the context, compared to the rhythm of spacing. Yes, and there is, Commissioner Mosley is correct, that one house with the wraparound porch is very, very, very close to the house next to it. We wouldn't, that's not something that we would encourage necessarily. This won't be, this definitely respects the side setbacks regardless. But yes, we felt 33 is what would be appropriate.
Okay.
And I'm assuming you came up with that 33 feet based on proportions with everything else, right?
Right, so we looked at the context on that block, the historic houses on the block, how wide they are. I don't know if you guys remember, we've actually seen this applicant before. They were here a couple months ago with the Foursquare, so they have really been working with us. So we've seen several different iterations of this project. So we've been working back and forth with them. And yeah, the width has changed a couple times. We've pretty consistently said 33, so we've held with that number. But this is the version they wanted to ask for today.
Commissioner Cashin, did you have another comment?
No, I'm just looking at it again.
Okay. And it was a 2-story prior submission, was a 2-story.
We did see a 2-story version, Brier, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm just going to try to help this along. As Commissioner Price was saying that in recommendation that he is pretty much in line with the recommendation because it's on page 7 specifically, and this would be number 4 on the dormer light connectors. So, commissioners, if you wanted to look at page 7, that might again the logic and the process of determining that. Architects, what are your thoughts about that?
Specifically, the need for additional setback of the side cross cables.
Mm-hmm. Because that's number 4 of the recommendation.
we, on 1.5 stories, we see them flush on historic homes, and we see them not flush. And I think that well, let me make sure I'm understanding what I'm looking at is in terms, let me reread the comment, make sure I don't make a. So in referring to the connectors, that would be between the two cross gables, the piece that connects, that needs to be 4 feet in lieu of whatever it is now.
4 feet on either side, correct?
4 feet on each side, so the elevations would therefore match. I feel like there's enough low roof showing that those are distinguishable from the cross gables as a plan, and I think, I mean, it's an effective device that, as designed, I don't, the improvement or causing it to fit better within the guidelines is not something that I see as a requirement for this application, personally.
Just for clarity, what is it stepped back now? You say 4, but what is it now?
Right, so here are the side gables, just so everyone's on the same page. Side gable here, we're talking about these connectors here.
Right.
They are currently inside, I believe, 2 feet,
2 feet.
and we're asking for 4.
Okay.
And the guidelines specify 2, but in practice.
The guidelines specify 2 for a detached dormer.
Right.
Yes, so the commission has allowed these sort of attached dormer connectors when they're appropriately inset. So there isn't really a hard and fast rule, so we're looking for your guidance here.
So the guidelines don't specify the inset on these connectors?
The guidelines do not address connectors between side gables.
All right.
The concern is just that we don't want the massing to become a true 2-story. We're looking for a 1.5 form here.
Well, circling back to the staff recommendation, I'm looking at the street view here, and this is a very modest house that is next door to a couple of other modest true one-story houses. And I think the staff's effort to reduce the scale of this proposed infill is appropriate to considerations of rhythm and spacing in the immediate historic context here, and that this would be a significant, not intrude, it's a nice house, but it's, to reduce its the overall impact of its scale on its neighbors, who I feel like we need to consider their interests in their own small, sort of modest houses. I think that the staff recommendation comes to a good compromise there by basing it on the widest historic example on a similarly sized lot.
So basically what we're doing is we're reducing the overall width to 33 feet, and we're stepping the upstairs connector quarters in
2 feet.
a total of 4 feet overall.
Right.
On the floor plan.
And the point is to reduce the overall scale and the impact that it has
Right.
on its neighbors. Yeah.
So in total, we're 6 feet less wide upstairs.
Yes.
Would it be
My
4?
math works. Two and two on
yes,
each side,
yes, right.
plus 4.
Yeah.
Actually, that's 8, not 6. That's a lot.
And the fact that it was a small house to begin with, and it's on a small, relatively, standard size 50-foot lot. If it was a bigger lot, I could understand approving the applicant. In this case, I feel like, with respect to the larger neighborhood and the way the guidelines are written, I think that this analysis is one that I'm comfortable supporting.
I may just be missing it, but I see on these submitted drawings that you have on the floor plan, the 37-foot wide scheme. Do you have a scheme with 33 feet wide? See what I'm talking about?
I will add one more thing.
Page 20, on page 20 of the documents that we have, no, sorry, no, that's not right. On page 19, it says upper level floor plan, just at the bottom, 37-foot wide scheme. That's the only scheme I see in here. Is that correct? There's not like an option.
That's the one that was submitted for review. We saw various different widths over,
okay,
so
but
yes.
that's what you're
So that's,
asking, okay.
That's just saying.
It's not like we have a choice
This is the
here.
second floor
This
plan
is-
that is associated with this. Yes.
Okay.
In the interest of moving forward and taking into Commissioner Mosley's comments, I would be amenable to holding to staff analysis on overall width and perhaps compromising on the step back of the connectors on the second floor.
Right.
In the interest of moving forward and getting through this.
I agree with that compromise.
Okay.
I think that's very legitimate.
All right. Ben, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
With that, in reference to 1014 Bate Avenue, I recommend approval of the staff recommendation with conditions except condition 4, that the connectors on the side elevations be inset by the wall by 4 feet. Alternatively, accepting the proposed design of 2 feet inset.
There's a motion.
Second.
There's a second by Commissioner Cashin. I have to say, that's a good compromise. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's 4 concurring votes. So that motion passes. Applicant, hopefully you're happy a little bit. Okay, thank you so much for working with staff. Appreciate your time.
Okay, next up is 1712 Sweetbrier Avenue. This is also an application for infill. This one is in Belmont, Hillsborough, and an administrative permit has been issued for the demolition of this non-contributing house. The historic context on this block includes 1, 1.5, and 2-story historic houses. Staff finds the overall massing, including the form, height, and width, are appropriate to the historic context. The ridge and eave heights are both lower than that of the historic 2-story house next door. The materials, roof shape, and slope and proportion and rhythm of openings all meet the design guidelines and are appropriate to the historic context. The design meets the base zoning setbacks and is appropriate to the historic context as well. The front setback will align with the houses on either side. With the addition of a walkway to the street, staff finds the design meets the guidelines for setbacks and orientation. No outbuilding is proposed at this time. Staff recommends approval of the proposed infill with the conditions seen here. The applicant is here.
Thank you, Jenny.
Good afternoon, Michael Ward with Lauderdale Rd Architects, 1618 16th Avenue South. Thank you, Jenny. Hunter and I have had a lot of fun working on this one. Complicated infill, very wide, very large lot, a lot of variation in context. The infill form, we've got some big 2-story houses, then a house or two of it, and we have a 1-story house next door. And the grade is insane. So our solution was to sort of, tuck this house into the site. And the developer is a very passionate developer. We worked with several projects, and he really wanted to do something sort of in a prairie vein. So we were excited to incorporate that into this, and felt like that's probably a really good solution for something, something that's a little bit more modern on a site that was going to require this type of work. So we like where we ended up, and I feel like staff's recommendation to sort of flip it around on the site makes a huge impression in terms of how that rhythm will sort of work on Sweetbrier. So I think that was a really good suggestion. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Open public hearing. Close public hearing. Discussion or a motion?
I think this looks like a great project, and appreciate Mr. Ward's working with Jenny, and as always, thank you for your presentation. Great work that you do. With respect to 1712 Sweetbrier, I move for approval of the staff recommendation.
Commissioner Price has made a motion and seconded by Commissioner Mayhall. All in favor? I do not see any opposed, so that 4 concurring votes passes the motion. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have 2200 18th Avenue South. This is a contributing house in Belmont, Hillsborough. It's an application for an addition. The addition includes a request for a reduction to the 20 feet of separation required between a house and outbuilding. The addition includes a Four Seasons room and a covered porch added to the back of the house. Additionally, a covered walkway will be provided connecting the house to the garage at the ground level. Staff finds that the design of the addition meets the design guidelines. The only issue with the proposed work is the proximity to the outbuilding. The proposed Four Seasons room will be only 8 feet 6 inches from the garage. The design guidelines require 20 feet of separation between a primary structure and an outbuilding. In the past, the Commission has approved reducing the 20 feet in cases where the lot is restrained or shallow, but has not typically allowed less than 10 feet unless there were extreme restrictions, such as an easement or a very truncated lot. As this lot is somewhat shallow at 140 feet, staff recommends a minimum separation of 10 feet. Reducing the depth of the proposed porch by 18 inches would still allow for a Four Seasons room that is 11 feet deep and a covered porch that is 7 feet deep. Staff recommends approval of the addition with the conditions seen here. The applicant is here.
Thank you, Jenny.
Good evening. Yes, good evening, commissioners.
Mr. Pond?
Oh, yes,
Just want to make sure we knew who you were.
I'm about to say that.
Okay.
It's been a long afternoon for me,
Yes,
too.
yes, sir, it has.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Van Pond. Van Pond Architect, 2929 Sidco Drive, 37204 here in Nashville. So this project, have two very enthusiastic and lovely clients I've worked with for 20 years who decided they needed to be in an urban area instead of a suburban area. And can you move to the kind of context site photograph thing? It'll help us a little bit. It's in there somewhere.
Presentation, actually.
Okay. Sorry. So this site is an interesting part of Belmont. It backs up to the Sterling Court Apartments. As such, these lots are a little bit shallower, as Jenny noted in the evaluation. Lots in Belmont typically are 140 feet, 150 feet deep. If you go over one street, they're 160 feet deep. This backs up literally to the backyard of Sterling Court Apartments. So the back of this garage is against their property. We don't think there's an alley there, but the next door neighbor just graveled it behind the garage. So that was very interesting. It happened in the last couple of weeks. There's an existing deck in place. Do we have that, Jenny? As illustration. It should
They
be
do have it
should be in your packets.
Yeah, it's in your staff report.
So there's an existing deck that we are reducing the footprint of for this sunroom. It goes within 6 foot 2 inches of the garage as it sits. While, yes, an 11 foot deep room is fine, this is if you look down the street in the context photographs, there's a lot of tight houses. This is not the first time we've asked for a less than 10 foot setback between a garage and a house in the Belmont Hillsborough zoning overlay, and actually we got a 6 foot one way over on Cedar Lane, whole different side of the world. But The owners would really like to have that 18 inches of extra space to make this room just a little bit more functional. It's not constricting light on anybody else. It's only tighter on their lot. Their next door neighbor's house stops at their first setback where the original house steps in 2 feet. We didn't do the addition to the house. It was done prior to us showing up, probably I think in 2021 or 2022, and resold to these folks. So we'd like to ask your consideration for a little bit tighter space between our garage and our sunroom, just so they have a little bit more space to spread out there. That's my ask. I would appreciate your consideration on that. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pond. Open public hearing and close public hearing.
Sorry, I don't mean to go first every time, be like a hog or whatever. I'm tired. I've evolved when it comes to these setback determinations that we do. I'm okay. 8 feet is, to me, okay. I think the last meeting I was at, which was back in May, we approved 6 feet for a similar lot where there was pre-existing buildings and pre-existing additions to accommodate a new garage. In this case, I'm persuaded by the applicant that another 18 inches in the addition, in the room, will make a big difference. And given that it is an in-town urban neighborhood with pretty dense built environment, I'm open to what the applicant's asking for.
Yeah, I was able to have a connection, and I was able to pull up the proximity. And to describe in words, I think Compton Avenue is how the detached garage is. You correct me, Van, if I get off track here, but Compton Avenue is how the garage is accessed. So it faces a side street, and the yard of the apartments is sort of backing right up to the property line here. So there's a question, I guess, of rhythm along the street, and because the existing deck already obscures that, I think, and that would be I think that is character defining of this, and I think not an ask of something that maybe isn't already compromised in terms of the 20 feet that we normally look for there. And so I was just bowing Commissioner Price on to your comments, in that certainly there is a distinct, on the elevations, there's a distinct separation between the garage, the detached garage, and the new four-season room there, which is something I think we look for, so it's not continuous sort of all the way to the back. There is a covered breezeway, but I think it's pretty evident that it's a covered breezeway and not an enclosure that marches on front to back. So I'm in agreement with your assessment.
With respect to 2200 18th Avenue South, I recommend approval of the staff recommendation with the exception of number 1, that the addition shall be a minimum of 8 feet, which I believe is proposed by the applicant from the outbuilding.
Okay, that is the motion.
I'm sorry, it's actually 8'6".
8'6".
I just don't want to have that.
8 feet 6 inches. Thank you for the clarification.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 8'6". Okay, there's a motion.
Second as amended.
And seconded by Commissioner Mosley. All in favor? Okay, all 4 concurring votes, and that motion passes. Okay, thank you. And thank you all for waiting till the very last minute. Oh, one more. Well, I was thanking the architect Pond. Yes.
Van, how is it that you get last? I'm taking notice, and sympathies to you. And
Okay. 1311 7th Avenue North is a circa 1890s frame workers cottage. It is a contributing structure to the National Register Historic District and the Germantown Historic Preservation and Zoning Overlay. In 2003, prior to the creation of the overlay, the house was remodeled and a two-story addition was constructed. A site plan submitted to the codes for this renovation shows the extent of the new construction versus the existing house. That's the bottom image. These materials show that the existing porch and side wall behind the front gable on the left, that dates to 2003. So the kind of side-facing gable is the historic portion. Everything else was reconstructed basically in 2003, and then the two-story portion is new. This application is to construct an addition and an outbuilding. The extent of the addition includes enclosing the existing side porch behind the main portion of the house and an additional one-story piece towards the rear. This is the side elevation showing the proposed addition. Overall, staff finds that the addition's height, scale, materials, and location and overall design meet the design guidelines. So I threw this presentation together fairly quickly this afternoon. So just to make clear, so kind of the red circled areas, the one-story portion is what's being added. Everything else is currently there. And here is the garage. The applicant is proposing a two-story outbuilding. Germantown's design guidelines are a little bit different in that they allow for two-story outbuildings behind a 1 or 1.5 story house, so long as the knee wall of the second floor is less than 6 feet, and that meets this design. So this is, you wouldn't see this in other districts, just wanted to point that out. So the fact that it's 2 stories and the eave height meets the design guidelines. The design guidelines do state that the ridge height of an outbuilding should not exceed the primary ridge peak of the principal structure. In the past, the commission has defined principal building as a historic structure, and it would exclude the existing or planned additions. In this case, the historic house, as measured from the top of the foundation, is approximately 18 feet 6 inches. And the applicant is proposing that the outbuilding have a ridge of 21 feet. So this is about 2.5 feet taller than the historic house's ridge, but still a couple feet shorter than the addition. Staff supports the proposed height in this case because of how small the historic house is. When historic houses have been less than 20 feet tall, MHCC has approved outbuildings that are up to 21 feet tall, as this height is about the minimum required to have usable upstairs space. In addition, this height is in keeping with other outbuildings that have been approved on this block of Germantown. The outbuilding has a footprint of 646 square feet, which is less than 60% of the footprint of the primary structure. So that meets the design guidelines. So overall, staff finds that the outbuilding and the addition meets the design guidelines, and we are recommending approval pretty much with our standard conditions about approving materials, and because it's Germantown, we also approve all appurtenances like fencing.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yep.
Hello again, Van Pond Architect, 2929 Sidcode Drive. We're working, this is the second time we've worked with different clients on this house, and I think they're actually going to do it this time if you all approve it. The addition is quite something, let's just put it that way. And so we're just trying to hide a little bit as much as we can. We worked with staff, and I appreciate staff's help discussing what to do with the garage and the height and so forth, and to make it a little bit more subordinate to what is there. So we agree with everything staff's asked for. I did get a phone call from a neighbor, and I wanted to talk about that. Do you have a site plan that you can pull forward? This is the only phone call I got from a neighbor, so I wanted to make this public. I did tell the neighbor on the phone that I would do this. Oh, they've shut it down. It's tired, we gotta go. So can you all see your packets on your screens? while we try to work through that, the call I got from the next door neighbor, who's at 1313, was about the placement of, about the scale of the whole project. We talked about that a little bit, but in particular, the placement we've shown of relocating some air conditioning units that would be between the house. This is one of those things when a survey really, really looks like you've got acres of space beside a house, and you really don't. In discussions with potential general contractors, we've really looked at this some more, and those condensing units shown about midway on the existing residence, on the plan north of top side, between this house and what would be 1313, they will not fit there. And we are not going to put them there, and we're not going to take a fence down to cram them in there. We're going to put them behind the house in the rear yard, probably as far as we can into the rear yard that will practically work for condensing lines. But we're not going to try and develop the areas between this structure and the structure at 1313, which I believe is an infill and was allowed to be tighter to the property line. And then if you walk there, I can't walk between those two houses. So we're not going to try and put air conditioning units there. And I wanted to say that I stipulated that to the neighbors. I would say that, and there we are. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Open public hearing.
I'm the neighbor.
Come forth, neighbor.
Thank you. I'm Tim Kaufman. I'm at 1313 7th Avenue North on the top part of the drawing right there. I really don't want those air conditioners right outside the window where I work every day now that I work from home. And Dan was on a phone call, very accommodating, and I'm happy to hear that they don't fit there anyway, because that would have been pretty bad for my working space. But I guess I don't have to worry about that. This poor house has been through a lot. It used to be very small. It's huge. I really hope we get some neighbors there. The people who live there once saved our house from a fire. So I'd love to have a family, be able to live there, long term. We haven't had anyone there for more than 2 or 3 years before. I don't think there's anything for this commission to do other than, I'm happy that those things are going to be moved. Thanks for all your work today.
Thank you for your patience to stay this far in the meeting. I don't see anyone else in this room that would do public. All right, so we open and we close public hearing. Commissioners?
Madam Chair, before we move forward.
Yes.
I don't think I need to recuse myself necessarily, and I'm happy to have a conversation with Ben afterwards about the interesting client that I worked for. But back in 2003, I had something to do with an addition to this residence that made it multifamily at that time. I think quietly multifamily, but I designed it not to be a multifamily home because I don't think it was permitted for it to be anything other than a single family home. But the issues are not important to hearing this case, and I think I can rule independently of any previous involvement. And certainly none of the parties who are here had any involvement with it at that time.
Duly noted, Commissioner. Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Thank you. With respect to 1311 7th Avenue North, I recommend that we approve this recommendation according to staff recommendations.
Okay, there's a motion by Commissioner Mayhall. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Cashin. All in favor? Okay. Seeing none opposed, the motion passes. Thank you. Appreciate it. Robin, anything else?
Yes, may I take a moment just to remind you that applications are open for the Citizen Academy. Deadline is coming up August 30th. So if you know of anyone who might be interested, send them our way. And not the next meeting, not in September, but in October, we'll be meeting at Bransford, this Berry Road, because of the voting, early voting.
Okay. Thank you all, commissioners. Thank you for your time. Thank you, staff. Yes. All right. Everyone,
Have a good evening.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.